Welcome, everyone. This is Kingdom in Context. I'm Sean, and I want to help. Thank you for showing up for this wonderful conversation we're going to have tonight about Babylon and Revelation. There's so much to talk about. A lot of people have questions, so we've got some wonderful guests going to join me tonight, and we're going to deep dive into some of those questions as much as you can handle, as much as we can handle. We may even take a couple questions from the audience throughout the show. So just put your questions in all capitalization in the live chat if you are. Or if you're watching this afterwards later, if I have time, I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. Put them in the comments below, guys. As you saw, check out our contextual study guide. The link is in the video description below. If you guys want to be a part of that, it's on my Patreon. You get early access as I'm going through the books of Scripture and completing those over the next several months. And you can actually have early access before we do a final publishing of the entirety of the collection. So the description is where you'll find links to that if you want to get involved with that. And otherwise, guys, I'm excited to get into this conversation tonight. So without further ado, I want to welcome my brother Wes Blaze from Wes Blaze Music.
Shalom, and what's happening?
Hey, welcome, Wes. Good to see you.
Thank
and we
you
want to
for
welcome Jason Lindgren from Secrets of Saturn. Welcome, Jason.
Oh.
Hey there, welcome. We also have Marley Eugene of his self-titled channel. Welcome, brother.
Shalom, fam. How y'all doing?
Doing great. Good to have you tonight. And then also Mike Maranatha of his self-titled channel. Welcome as well. I'm going to try to take you off mute here. Can't take you off mute.
That was me, sorry. Hello, everybody.
Howdy.
Welcome, guys. Okay, so as I invited everybody on tonight, I just wanted to get everyone's input on these topics, Babylon and Revelation, because Babylon is mentioned in Revelation, but it's not the only place in Scripture it's mentioned. There's a long-standing history of this particular name of Babylon, and its and how its tentacles reach out as an empire throughout the world, throughout history. And Revelation has a lot to say on it, and so does some other books. So I just figure we can get into it. If anyone has any topics that they want to bring out first, or a question about Revelation they want to bring out first, we can jump into that as well.
Cool.
Okay, I'll start that off. I have an idea. So you were on with Wayne McCroy and myself a few weeks ago, and we never really actually got into Revelation itself, but that's okay. Do you personally feel, or anybody else who wants to jump in here, that we're actually seeing that starting to play out right now? Because the bad guys, as we know, whether they actually follow the Bible literally or spiritually, they do use it to, like a playbook, I think is safe to say. And they know what's up. They know that there's a realm. This is interesting because there's like the transhumanists right above us. They're the ones that want to live forever and all this technology, all that crazy crap. But above them, the true elites, they know that there's a real spirituality to things, except that they're on the opposite side of all of us trying to actually, help people. So anyway, do you guys feel that we're actually seeing those events start to occur now?
I guess I would ask which specific events. Just Babylon's place in Revelation, the events of Revelation as a whole?
Well, let's talk about that. Let's break that down. I mean, we got a couple hours here, right? So are we in America, or maybe even Western culture, if you want to expand it out a little bit, are we in Babylon, do you think, guys? Because so the audience knows, I am not a Bible scholar in any way, shape, or form, but I am very studied in transhumanism and the elite and all that kind of stuff. The work that I do on my little channel, Secrets of Saturn, but on the bigger work that we do with Crow 777 Radio, we get into this stuff a lot, and I've looked into the bad guys a whole lot. So
it's valuable.
We talked about the bad guys on your show last time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's start with that. Do you think that we, as in the Western nations, the Western culture, do you think that that's Babylon? And if so, can you explain it? Because as I said, I'm not a Bible scholar, so I want to learn from this conversation as well.
What's up, Mike?
Mike, did you raise your hand?
I really want to talk. I did. Am I on mute? No. Okay. Man, this topic right here about the Americas is really important to me right now, because I've been studying a lot of esoterica over the last year and a half, from Manly P. Hall to William Cooper to a book from the 80s called Holy Blood, Holy Grail, which is Knights Templar, Rosicrucians. And so I've listened a lot to Manly P. Hall, which he's an occultist. I think he was from the early 1900s, like around the 1950s, was doing a lot of stuff, a lot of lectures and teachings. And I read some books of his, like The Secret Destiny of America. And it's a very interesting book. And it's strange because I find myself tempted to agree with a lot of these things in these occult works for some reason. Just logically, they make sense to me. And so in Secret Destiny of America, basically he puts out that the Americas have been inhabited for a long time, right? From the Amerindians, all the way down to South America, to Mexico, to the United States, and into Canada, Nova Scotia. He believes that they were contacted way before Columbus came here, and I'm talking like even in BC by the Greeks and other cultures throughout time, right? And then you have the American Indian religions, like Quetzalcoatl and these feathered serpents who came over and brought knowledge and civilization to them. But anyways, in regards to the mystery of religions, he believes that that the utopia of a free society, that even back in the days of like Plato and Plutarch and these people, they had always known about the Americas existing, and they had always known that this would be the place where this utopia would be birthed from, and so they had already started this free society, like with the Mayas and the Olmecs, I think, right? And so these people were it was not a monarchy. These people were voted in, and supposedly they hold the world record for peace. 500 years, I believe, the Mayas held with no wars. Anyways, so I'm very curious as to where does the Americas fit into this biblical narrative of the end times, because some people over here, they over exaggerate, and we are the focus now of Revelation in America. A lot of Americans believe that way. Other people, they look at the world as a whole. You got Europe and Africa and China and Russia, but a lot of people are just so focused on America. But the more I realize about how mystery religions really like have a focus for this, and they believe that out of America would birth a worldwide commonwealth. So what does anybody have anything to help me understand where America actually fits in?
Well, should we start with who founded, as far as the United States is concerned? I mean, other countries have different histories, of course, but I think most people know that Freemasons, predominantly anyway, started the United States. I think everybody's pretty well aware of that, right? And
well, according to Manly P. Hall, it wasn't specifically Freemasons. It was more so Francis Bacon and the mystery religions, like.
Well, isn't Freemasonry just a recruiter for mystery religion?
Right, yeah. Right. So
Bacon would have been before that anyway. He was earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So while that's not necessarily not true, the people who are actually involved with the actual setting up of the country, I'm talking like 1700s,
Franklin,
1760s, 1770s, right? And I was going to get to that. Like Franklin, for instance, is very well known to have danced with the devil under the pale moonlight. I mean, he made no bones of hiding anything, like his nonsense with the Hellfire Club and all that. So these are the people who set up this country, for better or for worse.
So then what do you guys make of so Sean, I don't remember which one of your videos it was. I'm trying to catch up, man. I've got so much going on.
It's okay. There's a lot.
But so one of the things that I found extremely interesting in one of your last videos regarding Babylon was it Thomas Jefferson's letter to John Adams?
I didn't cover that.
No? Oh, okay. It might not have been you. It might have been a different video. But there's a letter where John Adams is corresponding with Thomas Jefferson. This is in the library of Harvard, and they're basically having a discussion about the Jesuit order. And when I read that letter, it kind of threw me for a loop, because I think so oftentimes when we get into conversations about secret societies and Freemasons and just the entire hierarchical construct of this like skull and bones style societal constructs that exist, we tend to conflate all of them. Like everybody's on the same page and everybody's doing the same thing for everybody, and everybody knows who everybody is. But when I read, you know what I'm saying? When I read that, though, it threw me for a loop, because I do hear a lot of dialogue about, Freemasons starting America and they're all part of the same clique type deal. I didn't get that vibe, though, when I read that letter. And so I wanted to see if anybody on the panel maybe had any information. Like Mike is ready. Mike is ready tonight.
So if anybody
should I retitle the show
me,
tonight, guys, to The Hidden America?
No. I mean, I'm just.
Are we gonna
piggybacking off of what was?
Okay,
go ahead.
So I might be wrong here, but I believe that in Jefferson's time there were divisions going on. There was an anti-Masonic party, I believe, going on.
Came around
right?
Afterwards, though. The anti-Masonic party came around a few decades afterwards.
Was it after Jefferson? I thought.
Yeah, but
it might have been during his time.
They were aware of what was going on, but for instance, George Washington, very proud Mason, as well.
Right, absolutely,
a huge number of them. But as far as the actual anti-Masonic party, yeah, that was into the 1800s. But that doesn't change the point about what's being said about the Jesuit order. The Jesuit order by that point had already been going into countries and completely doing political destabilization. Like, people knew that. And if you, for better or for worse, if you're trying to set up a new country, the last thing you want is a bunch of these guys coming in and destabilizing everything.
Absolutely.
Because in my opinion, based off of years and years of research, all roads do in fact lead to Rome.
And that, Marlo, is what I did cover in episode 14 of Investigating Babylon, which was the Jesuits, the CIA, and how they were literally connected to the Pope, their allegiancy to the Pope, and how sent into other countries to destabilize. They also, there's a lot of information I did get to cover in that particular episode because I didn't have time. That they also, I had a whole list of all the different countries that they had built their schools and training centers for, like college age and high school age children, because it's like they're grooming them in this thought process, and then they can pluck from those groups of kids in all these different countries to find people they want to induct and then further raise in their system of political espionage. Basically, that's all it boils down to. And so there were a lot of countries that were getting infiltrated by the 17th, 18th century, but this had started back in the 16th century, in the 1500s, where they did this mass push to go into multiple different countries, and were getting kicked out of multiple different countries because they were like too obvious.
Yeah,
they were too obvious. Yeah.
So now this Jesuit Roman papal type entity, would you say that is like an evolution of Babylonian practices, and that would be the reason why you kind of covered that in the video?
Priesthood. Yeah, it's the priesthood.
Okay, so that being said, then, right, if we're having a conversation about how America started in with Freemasons, and if the Freemasons aren't on the same page as the Jesuits, then I don't know how relevant the founding fathers of America being Freemasons would be with regards to America possibly being Babylon.
Well, Jason, if I'm not mistaken, help me if you know about this, but I read a long time ago that the Masons weren't always what they are today, and apparently in the beginning they started out a little more pure, noble, but then they got kind of taken over.
That's the way I understand it. Yeah. Now, secret societies in general, if we want to like go way back in time, seem to have started, and this is just kind of a broad stroke, but this is the way I've always taken it. Most secret societies, if not all secret societies, as far as the ones we'd know about today, started because they were trying to protect knowledge, things like such as geometry and things that like the average peasant way back when, and I'm talking thousands of years ago, wouldn't know or understand. So these things that they were coming up with for the first time ever were very protected, and it kind of stemmed out from there. So some people with maybe not the best of intentions might know things about astronomy or things like that they could use to predict things that the peasants might not even come close to knowing how to do. So that's where it seems to have started. But here's the weird thing. There's always been a spiritual component to it. And as we all know, the Freemasons draw heavily from a lot of Egyptian everything, like everything about the Egyptian. I actually got to go into once. I'm not a Freemason, but I got to go into a temple once. And after all these years of looking at this stuff, everything was exactly where it's supposed to be. So as somebody who was a non-Freemason attending a funeral service, a remembrance service, or whatever they called it, I was like, oh, wow, they actually do this. I didn't know that they would actually let the profane in there as they think of us. And I was like, okay, I've studied all this stuff. Is this actually right? And I walked in, and yes, indeed, everything was exactly where I thought it would be. And it does indeed draw heavily from the Egyptian.
Do they have like a table that's reminiscent of a showbread table and an altar and a...
Yeah.
Do they have that kind of setup?
Yeah, it had the checkerboard floor. It had, like, if you've seen the traditional square, I guess you would call it, and there were, let me think, this is 7 years ago now, I'm starting to forget, but it had like benches or bleachers, whatever you want to say, on two sides for folks to sit on, but then over like kind of more it was a pretty large room for being a small place. It had the checkerboard floor, and then it had the Joachim and Boaz, the obelisks, or the penis of Osiris, whatever you want to. I don't know how much detail you want me to go in. I've looked this stuff up. By the way, Mike, you mentioned something.
We're not on Rockfan, just to let you guys know.
We're not on Rockfan?
We're not. We're just on YouTube tonight. So
I will be careful with what I say so I don't get your channel pulled, because I know things that could do that. But Mike, you mentioned Bill Cooper earlier. If anybody is not familiar with Bill Cooper, he did a 42 or 43, something like that, episode series called Mystery Babylon. If you are not familiar, listen to that in order. Do not skip around. Go in order. Bill did a great service to humanity by that series.
I would love to check that out. I never knew about that.
Yeah, that was in the early 90s, like 93, 94-ish. And the reason why I'm telling you to do it in order is because he builds from one episode to the next. So if you skip around, you might be like, what the hell is he talking about?
Sounds like investigating Babylon.
Right, facts.
Yeah, and Bill had some issues early on. He was kind of into the crazy UFO shit, but he got over it and then became more of like a hey, let's save America kind of guy. At least as far as I can tell.
In Pale Horse, he says a lot of crazy stuff in there about aliens, but he admits in that book that the things that he saw in the military could have been shown to him on purpose to set him on that alien track, right? So he said it's highly possible that the things that were shown were not true, not real. They were just deceptions in order to spread misinformation, right?
That's very possible.
Yeah, that's part of their.
That's what he says in Pale Horse. Is that because he saw a lot of stuff in the Navy, and he was
right.
a high-ranking intelligence officer.
Yeah, he was a naval intelligence officer. He saw what's called a USO or an unidentified submersible object, or like a UFO in the water, basically. He saw it, he reported it, and that's kind of what springboarded that. But as everyone knows, you don't know with the intelligence community. They mess with people a lot. Sometimes hey, here's a useful idiot. Let's tell them something stupid. And they'll go out and spread it to a bazillion people. And Bill Cooper in the 80s did say a lot of stupid shit to a lot of people at UFO conferences. And you can actually go and find some of those. But later on, what's interesting is in the 90s, which is the stuff that I found quite a long time ago now, actually, he was speaking out against that stuff, saying, hey, this is deception. Watch out. But anyway, I didn't mean to sidetrack. So to get back to the Masonic side of it, what I saw was they had the checkerboard floor, they had the little altar with the book on it. Now, what's interesting about the Freemasons are you have to have a spiritual belief. It doesn't necessarily have to be Christianity per se, but if you don't believe in a God, like if you're not open to spirituality, you're not getting in. And I'm talking about even at the Porch Mason level, which is like your first, second, third degrees in your Blue Lodge or your Mother Lodge, all that. They're not having it. Like you have to be spiritual, and that tells me a lot right there. They are very deceptive even to their own. So like you don't start finding out crazy shit that like you're swearing blood oaths to Lucifer until like now I can't attest to this because obviously I'm not a Freemason, but like from what I have read from people who've spilled the beans, you don't start hearing about stuff like that till about the 30th degree. You have to be a 32nd degree to fulfill the Scottish Rite, and then there's an honorary 33rd degree which is they kind of like headhunt you at that point, and they take you to the 33rd degree temple in Washington, D.C. And at that point, I think, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself. I think a lot of the stuff with Freemasonic accusations is kind of silly. People just see Freemasonic signs, they automatically go bonkers, thinking like it's the worst thing ever. Most Freemasons don't know diddly about diddly. They're completely clueless, and they're lied to.
Right.
It's part of their compartmentalization.
It's like everything. Yeah. Exactly. It's how everything works. It works through massive compartmentalization. So even like
I would say it's a pyramid scheme.
Yeah,
it's a filtering process. You know, they have all these people, and they're judging their members, and the people who are what they're looking for are the ones who rise, right? So then the rest of them, they just let them stay down low.
Yeah, it's just a good old boys club, and they do some good work, like they will do charity work and things like that. So I always tell people, don't get hung up on the Freemason thing. Like, just because you see a lodge in your town doesn't mean that they're in there sacrificing children to Baal or something like that. Like, that's not happening.
Chances are there is one in your town.
There almost certainly is one in your town.
So let me ask this.
Yeah.
So let me ask this, right? Because we know that these conversations can go for hours, right? I've seen so many YouTubes about secret societies and stuff like that, and you can have a 5-hour conversation about this stuff without bringing up one Bible verse. But for an individual like me, right? So my calibration is as such, right? I'm going to start off with the text, and then I'm going to build whatever my disposition is from there. And if I don't have very specific language to attach my disposition to, I keep it in mind, right? But I'm very hesitant to bring it up in conjunction with scripture, right? And so when people are saying things like, well, you know, is America Babylon, or Freemasons or Jesuits and stuff like that, for someone such as myself, the moment you say Babylon, I'm going to go get my Bible app, I'm going to type Babylon in, and whatever verses pop up, I'm going to see the likelihood or how much of what you've said seems to coincide with what I'm reading, right? Now, when we're talking about the Babylon in Revelation, what is it in there that makes you feel that America might potentially be Babylon the Great? Like, what is there any language in Revelation that makes you feel that, or is it anywhere scripturally that kind of causes you to make that connection?
Who are you addressing the question to?
To the whole family, but
I don't. I don't. So I'm bow out of this answer.
Okay, so with Jason, I would agree that there's likely some really scary stuff going on with the secret societies, but as far as the how would you put it? What connection that has with Babylon the Great in Revelation? We still have all our work ahead of us, because we have to figure out what's causing us to make that connection. So, is there anything that you personally have seen that causes you to do that? You or Mike?
All right. Well, as far as Bible verses, I'm not the guy for that. I have read Revelation, but I'm not somebody who can quote verse and all that. So maybe Sean can interject, because I know he knows that stuff. But I can tell you that the people who are behind everything there's some bad people. And we're on YouTube. Glad I remembered that. There are things going on right now that you can get for free that are not necessarily the best thing in the world for you, and that I personally,
I understand.
my opinion, falls into this thing that was very popular at the beginning of the 20th century, known as eugenics. And if I use enough buzzwords without saying it, hopefully people will figure out what the hell I'm talking about, and they'll be able to figure it out for themselves.
Well, I got it.
Yeah. In fact, I remember
I would tell you in detail what exactly I think is going on.
At the turn of the 20th century, there was hotly contested debate over that same pharmakia topic. And there's actually books being written. There was people coming out protesting against the introduction of these serums that they were calling snake oil and poison, straight up, just calling them poisons. And I think that's still a apt description, in my opinion. I actually have I have the axe damage, axe minus the V damage on my arm from when I took a booster when I was a young kid, and I was like partially paralyzed for a while on my upper half of my body, my arm, and it left kind of like this blood scar on my right bicep. And so,
Just remember the boosters are good for you, boys and girls.
Right, that's right. And yeah, we're talking about booster seats that you put underneath kids at Pizza Hut, in the Pizza Hut
Right.
with the tablecloth that looks like Marlowe's.
Doesn't it suck that we have to do this?
Oh my God, I got used to Rockfin where I would just say whatever the hell I wanted.
Yeah, this is crazy. It is crazy, but these are the times we live in, and it's crazy,
exactly.
So to answer that first question that was asked about 10 minutes ago, which was, I think Mike may, or Marlo may have asked me, Mike may have asked me about, what do I feel is America part of Babylon, or is America the Babylon mentioned Revelation? And
I just wanted to know. I just wanted to know, because I don't think America is Babylon. No. I just want to know, like, where is America in this scenario? You know what I mean? Because
I think
this is a giant experiment that took place. You know what I'm saying?
They call it
a
giant experiment.
Yeah. As far as I understood, it's intended to be the phoenix that gets destroyed and rebirthed.
Mm-hmm.
So they have longstanding plans for this. And people always ask me on my channel, do you think, like Jason just asked at the very beginning of the show, do you think we're in Revelation right now? And I always tell people, I think at least another 50 to 70 years, because of the things I see in Scripture mentioned, and then because of the way I look at society as much as I can through the filter of media to see what's out there, what's prominent in the culture. And I don't base it off of, because I don't base it off of how much technology has been presented to the mainstream culture. I base it off of the mainstream culture's behavior, because to me, that's the indicator Yeshua told us to look for, the lawlessness, that people's hearts will go cold as a result. So regardless of how much technology is, I think they've always had advanced tech, by the way, if you see my Investigating Babylon series.
Absolutely.
So I don't think that's our barometer. I think a lot of people like to use the trend, even though I fully talk about transhumanism and all its advancements or quote unquote advancements, all its deceptive news press releases about what they're so-called doing. And what they claim they can achieve. I don't think that's a red herring, if you will, because it's more about degradation of the culture so they can then receive the deception that's coming, because they don't have any actual moral fiber to stand on. And so they're easily deceived, right?
That's what Albert Pike wrote that in his how the Third World War, I guess, is supposed to be initiated. That's exactly how he said it was supposed to be initiated. Albert Pike is supposed to be like the Freemason of Freemasons, and he's the guy that in the 1800s, I guess, wrote how the two world war. But yeah, so on his Third World War, which is supposed to be the last thing, it's exactly what you said. Like, society gets so degraded through, I believe he said,
the introduction of atheism. Yeah,
and a war between the Islamic State, and Zionism destroys itself. Christianity gets destroyed, and they all accept the Lucifer doctrine. Idea.
I think the technology being in the hands of the elite all this time is different in comparison to when it was given into the hands of the profane, of the masses, because that's what has corrupted morality, in my opinion. Like, at least a high percentage of the degradation of morality within society is due to technology.
Are you sure? Well, let me think about that.
I would say so. Because
I mean, it
allows for propagation of ideas. It allows for.
Wouldn't it be about the user though? I mean, as opposed to like instead of a blanket on all members of the mankind with technology, because like I'm using technology right now. It's my dedicated purpose every day to get out the gospel of the kingdom of God, to share the hope of the resurrection with people. I use both my tablet, my cell phone, the lights, the camera. So, I mean, I do hear what you're saying. It definitely expedites with the wrong push, because we see the media twists for the push of technology to not only, and this is my opinion, but they're using the technology to enclose the trap further, but also to get people addicted to it, get them further distracted so they don't see the spider web closing in. Yep. But there are people out there that are trying to use technology for the good. I mean, I'm literally a part of Lighthouse.
I mean, I'm not saying that.
Always view.
I'm not saying the technology is evil and that it's actually the computer that corrupts. It's the fact that these ideals are so easily transmitted through it, and that's why you have TikTok and you have all of these millions of young females out there just degrading themselves and like being filled with vanity and the men on the other hand filled with lust. Then you have yeah, and then the
Y'all hear
ideas that
something
are
crazy,
pushed through
guys?
it. You know what I'm saying? The propaganda.
When I was younger, before TikTok, before, because I'm an old dude, I'm probably the oldest guy on this panel. So I went to a Hooters when I was in Bible college, and I went to a Hooters one night and took my Bible in with me, and ordered my food and set the Bible on the table and started reading it, not looking at a single girl, right? And the waitress was like, she was like disturbed, right? Because they're used to getting the attention, right? They're used to getting,
Got you.
they're trying to play up for that tip, and and they're watching just dudes gawking the whole time, right? But I'm just sitting there reading that Bible, and that turned into like an hour and a half conversation of this girl sitting down with me and reading the Bible with me.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, she's in her Hooters outfit, right? But I didn't care. I mean, I'm not saying I was impervious to, an attractive woman. I'm just saying, like, it was like, I'm ornery like that. Like, I do experiments intentionally like that. And that was an experiment for me, was like, what would happen instead of giving them what they're used to? What happens if I just go in there and start reading the Bible?
That's deep.
Yeah.
Was she a
So
Christian?
she had, she had left, and moved out of her family's house, or she had grown up Christian. But what I noticed, and this is one of the, not this specific story, but this general premise of what I'm about to say about this girl, is what led me to, one of the reasons to start my channel, which is this girl just had questions that her parents could never answer. And even though she was raised in a Christian family, she had a good heart. She wanted to believe, right? Obviously, like Mike is talking about, she's caught up in the deceptions of this world and what the world's telling her. She needs to go put on these short shorts and do hula hoops in the middle of Hooters and get tips. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, when it came to having a real conversation with her about the Bible, she was interested, and she just had basic questions. And it was like, what would happen if those basic questions got answered before she got hired at Hooters? I mean, would she even applied? So I do agree on a definitely on a cultural rot level, Mike, that technology can expedite that cultural rot for sure.
It's
if
like
it's
the
pointed
teachings.
like a gun.
Yeah, it's like the teachings of the Watchers, right? A lot
I
of
was
the
gonna
things that
say
they
that same
taught in
thing.
Enoch, right, are default, like, benign.
Right.
Isn't that the word? Right? That they don't
They're
have
neutral.
really one way or the other, but they can be used either way for great catastrophe or good.
Yeah, it can. Now it seems like 1 talks about the Watchers that they intentionally were trying to use these tools to trick mankind, deceive mankind, and then once they had their children, then they taught the same practices to their children. Then their children were starting to be worshipped as gods, which the Greeks referred to as the demigods, and then they became brutal, authoritarian, and enslaving. You know what I'm saying?
Don't get me wrong; they definitely had malicious intent with their teaching.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I didn't think you were. I was just kind of going through the thoughts as well as my head, is because it's like it's the same enemy, because Azazel was that only angel that didn't get locked up in Enoch, and he's still out after the flood. So then it shouldn't surprise us that we see those same deceptions being perpetrated after the flood as well, and it gets centralized with this emerging new one world, one nation, one tribe, whatever you want to call it, thing of Babylon that got started a couple hundred years after the flood. Which I think is interesting. Like I've tried to show my Babylon series, like they were already worshiping Jupiter. The priests of Jupiter showed up at Babylon to help build the city and the tower. So it's like they already had their false religions established, which was what Noah talks about in Jubilees chapter 10. Like the unclean spirits were already deceiving his sons and grandsons and causing them to walk in lawlessness and unrighteousness. And a part of that was picking up the ways of the Watchers, which was idolatry and human sacrifice and, incantations and charms and enchantments and things like that. So, and all the things that go with it, which some of those things are a little more subtle than others. Like, okay, so you guys know that we see, because Revelation 17:18 talks about the sorcery and the witchcraft of Babylon. So, like in a stereotypical movie or TV show, you see them doing, they'll do a spell, right? And they'll do something and it looks very obvious. And they have to like go through a ceremony and arrange some things in the right way on the floor and speak these right words. And that's that. I don't know magic. I don't study it or practice it, but like that seems to be the showman stuff. You know what I mean? Like that seems
Depends
to be
on what it is.
Yeah, I agree, Jason. Yeah,
Some of it is intent, and
the severity of what. But it seems like
I'm not into it either, but I've looked at a lot of it.
Okay. But when I look at our media today, and I look at the deceptions being perpetrated over multiple countries, I see like a deeper, more subtle form of magic being employed. And I know,
Absolutely.
Owen Benjamin talks about this a lot, right? But it's this idea of just it's not openly trying to throw some sort of chopped up hair and pig that's been cooked
Right.
and throw some kind of potion on you while they say some sort of incantation, but more like it's just a slow, continual progression of deception that's being fed to you in a way that you receive, and it's like this subtle form of magic
So
that is Disney, basically. I'm
that
just
that reminds me also, because there's a lot of brothers and sisters in the community who, if you take a painkiller, you're worshiping Satan, because that's pharmakia. And I wanted to ask the panel today, like, okay, so where do you guys stand with the idea of pharmakia? Because one of the arguments from a lot of people in the Torah community would be, well, any pharmaceutical grade medicine is part of this Babylonian deception and spell. It comes across as medicine, on the surface, but really what it is sorcery. So where do you guys stand with things like that?
real quick before we jump into this answer. Hi, Rose is here tonight watching. Welcome, Rose. She's asking. She says she's scared of the word Azazel because we used that earlier. Remember, you guys remember that movie with Denzel Washington, Fallen, where the demon would jump from person to person?
Oh no, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was like late 90s.
Well, Azazel is one of the angels of the Book of Enoch, but you probably know more than I do about that. I just know where it comes from.
Yeah, Rose. Just the angel is one of the characters in Enoch that is. He's the one that I think in chapter 9 that the creator says ascribe all sin to Azazel, and he's going to get a different punishment than the other 200 because he didn't actually take a wife and start having Nephilim babies. So he's the one that didn't get locked up forever. His judgment was proclaimed, but we don't see that actually carried out until Revelation chapter 20, verse 1, when Messiah returns and the kingdom begins on the earth. So this is why throughout the rest of Scripture, from Genesis 6 all the way to Revelation 20, we have the Satan character is the one that's called Azazel, and he's the one that's still, as 2 Peter says, he's still out roaming like a lion, seeking whom he may devour. And he's the one in Revelation 12:17 that is making war against those who keep the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. So by the way, that movie is super fake. Demons don't jump to people that quickly and that fast, so I wouldn't be worried or scared about that. But ultimately, so go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Azazel is also the leader of the unclean spirits. In Noah's day, right? The unclean spirits were messing with the sons, basically, corrupting them, causing them pain and leading them astray and all kinds of things. But they also cause disease. And I think in the book of Jubilees, there is a book that was given from the angels. No, actually from Azazel, I believe, by request of Noah to Yah. He asked for how to combat these unclean spirits and these diseases. And Yah made Azazel write down a book and give him. Oh, well, it was the Satan, though, wasn't it?
Again. No,
wasn't
it the Watchers. The one narrating the book of Jubilees is the one who gives him the book of medicines to counteract the diseases of the unclean spirits.
So it was an angel that gave the book to him?
It's the angel that's narrating the book of Jubilees.
Okay, right. Well, so it was a righteous angel anyways. But he gave a book of medicine to combat the diseases of the unclean spirits. So, and that goes back to Marlo about the medicine. Where do we stand on that? I would say that medicine is good, but obviously medicine has become corrupted in some forms. If you watch the commercials on TV about all the side effects these things are having, so but like penicillin. Penicillin is a naturally occurring antibiotic, right? And it saves millions of lives. So I would say that penicillin is a great thing, right?
It's noteworthy to mention here that in that book of medicines you were just referring to, it was so that he might heal them with the herbs of the earth, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, not
whatever, yeah. Those things.
not a spike protein or not a mRNA manipulation, but simply just the herbs of the earth, and that's what
Facts.
people are actually finding in the last 6 to 12 months. They're just finding natural ways to combat the things that they're being lied about too. So yeah, that's that. I'm sorry, Marla. What was your full question again? I apologize.
It's kind of touched on, right? Because depending on how should I say, depending on how sticking to the text your perspective is, right? Like, okay, I'm only going to use herbs for my diseases and whatnot.
Spagyrics is actually the medicine of herbal extraction and making medicines just from that. About as far from pharmakia as you could possibly be.
What can you repeat that? Because I didn't hear what you
Spagyrics, also known as the alchemy of the plant world, but it is the way of taking herbs. Like if someone was trying to make extracts or tinctures or things like that, purely from Mother Earth to help cure or help the body or something like that, the general term for it is called spagyrics. I know a couple people who do phenomenal jobs of doing things, and they do indeed do amazing.
Thanks for that information.
That's a made up word.
So I'm a very strong proponent of, you know, proper diet, getting preservatives and all the bad stuff out of your diet, because I do believe that a lot of the ailments that we experience are because of how we eat, the toxins in the air and whatnot. And so there's a variety of ways, right? But however, I still deal with that kickback, right? Of, well, what if a brother has a mental illness, or what if a brother has, you know, or brother or sister has anxiety issues and they're on Zoloft or something like that, right? Well, depending on who you're dealing with, you know, your subsequent impending response might be something like, you know, any pill that's an herb, not an herb, is pharmakia. How accurate do you think that a statement like that is? Do you think that, because I do believe that the medical industrial complex is clearly corrupted. How corrupted though? Is it that corrupted that every single thing that they might prescribe somebody would be considered pharmakias?
For the most part, yes. That doesn't mean that there aren't things out there that can help. But the predominance of what the pharmaceutical industry does, and I'm trying to say this carefully since we're just on YouTube, the predominance of what they do is treat symptoms, not cure diseases. If you cure a disease, you no longer have a customer. And that's not the order of the day, is it? So.
And Marlo, it's also maybe depending on what state you're in, because if you're in Colorado, you may have a doctor that says, "Oh, go down to Livewell and get you some of that good green," and then you may not need a Xanax.
But hey, the good green, though, the good green for epilepsy. Like I've heard so many stories about CBD oil on people who are epileptic and like shutting down seizures in children. So like, and that goes back to this, you know, healing with the herbs. I'm not saying go out and toke it up, you know, until you can't see straight. But I'm saying
I've interviewed the man whose name is attached to a lot of the oil and all that, and his name is Rick Simpson. I interviewed him years ago, and yeah, that's exactly it. These things can do wondrous things if done properly. It's not for the point of just having a good time hanging out with your friends. The whole point is that
my problem is I can't have even a little bit, or I'm done for days. So like, I can't even, if I was prescribed
even medicinally though, you have to deal with that. Like you might have, for instance, a friend of ours who administers this a lot. He's in Michigan. His wife was going to die, and she didn't like the high from it, but it was literally like, do you want to die or do you want to do this? So he stayed with her while she was being administered the oil until she got through it. And guess what? She's still alive today. That was years ago. So
my goodness, like
it is what it is.
I could, like, you know how in movies they give people like more morphine so they die peacefully.
Oh yeah.
Like if they're in a war zone or whatever. I just need someone just to lean over and blow some weed smoke in my face as I'm dying. And I'm gonna fly away. as my soul flies away.
Oh man.
Like I'm such a lightweight. It's crazy. What's up? Let's play this. What were you saying?
I didn't say anything. I'm just wondering where this conversation is going.
No, it's deep because we're talking about the sorceries. We're talking about the pharmakia and the sorceries of Babylon. And the question is okay, well, is it going to be something really, really blatant where everybody's standing outside with a Ouija board and everybody's doing that? Or is it something subtle, right? And so one of the questions that I've always had, because I've seen this come up in different Torah observant Facebook groups, is what are the parameters of pharmakia, right? I also wouldn't put it past the food industry, right? We know
they're kind of intertwined to a degree.
The first thing that comes to my mind is that if an ingredient or a substance has a long list of negative, severe side effects, potentially even,
that in and of
that's
itself,
a good
If
indication.
it has a long list to begin with, that's probably not food.
Yeah, it's a good indication that that's not real medicine, you know,
or food.
Yeah,
or food. Yeah, both. Now let's be real for a second. The what's going on right now is partially and a whole lot to do with the pharmaceutical industry, because they're making bank right now. And I'm trying to, again, watch my words, how I say this. But how many people do you see walking around with things on their faces? This is the pharmaceutical industry and an extension of that, casting a spell over pretty much the entire world. And the people who have given in to said problem are having worse problems a lot of times, because we get a lot of people from the inside in the medical industry who report to us what's really going on. And I assure you, there's a lot more problems than are being let on about. I think that's
just for the viewer. I just want to put this on screen, guys. We are talking about Revelation right now because we have on screen, this is that famous verse in Revelation 18:23. That at the end of this verse, for the merchants were the great ones of the earth, because all the nations were deceived by your sorcery. Your being pointing back to the idea of Babylon being spoken to in this passage, in this whole chapter, actually. But the idea is, if we look up this word sorcery in the Greek, this is where people have realized that it actually is the use of the word at the very bottom here, pharmakia. So this is the idea that people, it's not just, again, we're not, like I was saying, it's not like this, Bewitched from the 1960s where someone's like twinkling a little bell sound and they're doing some sort of spinning a circle and casting a spell on you. That's not the kind of sorcery. We're talking about a more subtle form of sorcery that's called pharmakia. And
can you click it and open up the word?
And so when you look at this word and its definition, it's the use of medicine, drugs, or spells, and they're intimately connected. And so this is where how do we get this information out to more people, that taking a manipulation of these drug concepts, even if they're FDA approved, it's just going to further put you into their control. This is literally why in that passage it says the nations were deceived by your deception, but that they were deceived with deception of this type of sorcery. So it makes sense, because, like I've tried to talk about in my Vestige Babylon series, that some of the practices of Babylon have been consistent since way back. And one of those practices was at these temples that worship Baal and Moloch and all these other gods, there was alcohol and drug use involved. It was a part of the partying, and it was actually a part of the carousing, which in the book of Exodus chapter 32, it is the word in the Hebrew that's generically translated for the word play. Like when they built the calf, the molten calf, and they were worshiping it at the base of the mountain, and Moses runs down there, and then Moses is told, hey, they built a calf, there's sacrifice to it, and the people had their feast, and then they got up to play. Where you look up that Hebrew word, it's the word carousing, so sexually carousing, because this was a part of these feasts, was to get drunk. Other drugs were involved. There was mass fornication that would start to happen, and that was in addition to the sacrifices that had taken place or about to take place. So it was all these practices are synonymous with worshiping and being deceived by the practices of Babylon. And I'm using this Babylon term like over encompassing. Obviously,
Right.
like we talked about earlier, it came from the Watchers, these rebellious group of angels that were initially, they were sent to the earth to help mankind. That's the crazy part. Jubilees 4:15 tells you that they were sent to the earth to actually teach mankind right behavior. But then when they got here, they saw some shorties, and they were like, "Hey, this little girl look pretty good. Look at this girl." And then they were like, "Okay," so they started abusing their position, and then took wives, had children, and then West Plays and I kind of jokingly theorized, is it possible that they, once they fell into their sin and their transgression of their righteous behavior as angels, which what they were supposed to be, they then were like, all right, well, let's just get all of mankind to join in our behavior, and maybe our punishment will be less if we like deceive all these people and get them to do it with us. You know what I mean? So because they like the Bible describes this idea that the angels are like a priesthood, they are a priesthood, and they're sent to the earth to help mankind learn right behavior. So like, and in the Bible's eyes, mankind is the focus of all of creation. All these heavenly angels and the multiple layers of the firmament above us were created on day one with the focus of us. Like they're ministering servants. Yeah, ministering servants to come help us do what's right. We're little brother that's being trained up, and older brother abused his position, stole our girlfriend, and started corrupting little brother. You know what I mean? So it's like it's horrible what happened. And so but when I go after the flood, after those angels were locked up and Azazel's young one left out, he gets control over these unclean spirits and starts deceiving mankind after the flood. Well, that all converged in this really epic moment called, the building of the city and the Tower of Babel, where it became kind of like a centralized empire for the first time, ruling over many different families at the time. So I don't know if they were technically tribes yet, or, I don't want to get into the semantics of that word, but if they were ruling over many different families, and only after that event, when Babylon was destroyed by the judgment of God, were those families then speaking different languages and then became individualized nations. So when that happened, Babylon didn't lose control. And this is the part that I think a lot of people don't realize. It wasn't like, oh, okay, so we're gonna stop now. We're just gonna go do something else. No, they kept control. They just went to different nations and different languages. They put on different outfits to appeal to different people groups, and they continued the same practices throughout all these nations. And just like today, right? Just like you see the same practices of communist Russia happening in China and Vietnam, South American countries being as pushed on America as hard as possible in the last 30 years, because it's the same practices of a political system, which is actually also Babylonian, of suppression and subjugation that is shared by multiple countries, right? And so in a similar sense, this is where this empire of Babylon, like we see all the ways up into the days of Daniel, ruling over 127 different provinces. Guys, that's huge.
I know.
It's not saying like this little country just west of Israel that was called Assyria had 127 different segregated provinces in it. No, it's talking about other nations. So I'm sorry, go ahead, West, please.
Oh, I was just going to ask, are we to believe the modern narrative that modern Iraq is that ancient Babylon? Because what you just said, lends to the idea that that kingdom was spread through, much larger land masses than those common borders we see today. So is Iraq in modernity, is that a part of where that Babylonian empire started?
Supposedly, that's the general vicinity.
That's just what we read if you search it on Google, right?
Yeah. That's right. Can we prove that? Maybe archaeologists could do a better job of saying that.
Right.
But, and that's where I would be getting that from.
Saddam Hussein was fascinated with the actual geographical location of Iraq, which is nothing anymore. It's a wasteland. And it's not really, it actually is the fulfillment of it. What's that?
Right, in scripture, yeah.
Yeah, it was prophesied to never be inhabited again. And in a general sense, it's not inhabited again. I mean, there was a palace built there by Saddam, and there's been a few people that live in the area, but it's not the great kingdom and city that it once was, whose walls were 60 feet high, having chariot races on the top of it.
There are also a lot of rumors of artifacts being removed from Iraq in the 2003-2004 era.
Yes.
That's true.
Well, is it Fallujah? A lot of people don't realize that Fallujah is ancient Nineveh in the Bible. And that's where, if you go in and you look at the Iraq War 2003-2005, you can go online, you can see soldiers who had posted pictures of them going into Fallujah, and the actual ancient gates of Nineveh with the huge lions with wings were still there. But since then, since 2011, they've all been demolished and destroyed.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, that's
because I don't want you to know history.
Facts.
Right. No, that's
Facts.
absolutely.
I think that's a good segue into something that I've been trying to decipher. Like, when I'm trying to build an eschatological timeline, if it's hype, Mike,
he's frozen up right now. I just let him know.
Okay. If it's hyper influenced by the New Testament, I see Rome. I see all the arguments that people make about the West and America and the Freemasons and all that stuff. I see why they feel that those arguments and those dispositions might be, biblically accurate, right? That the Antichrist is going to come from the papacy and stuff like that. A lot of the stuff that we were discussing when I had the discussion on Argumentum. But when my eschatological timeline is influenced by the Tanakh, I see a lot more Middle Eastern movement going on when I'm looking at Ezekiel, right? And so, and when I'm looking at Nebuchadnezzar's statue, I'm looking at the four beasts. There's so much going on, and it's described in a variety of different ways that the effort to place everything in its proper chronological timeline and then figure out who is who in the end, because we're not using the terms Edom anymore. We're not using the terms Mount, like the terms that are used in the Tanakh to describe different people groups and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
people always ask who's Gog and Magog.
We just got done asking, okay, well, what is modern day Babylon? Because they don't call it Babylon anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, who do you guys think that Babylon is? Do you think it's a city? Do you think it's a country? Do you think it's more of a
what if it's more of a movement
do you think it's a movement? Do you think it's something more metaphorical? Where do you guys stand with that?
Babylon is trying to take over what was America, and they're trying to destroy what was here, because I see that happening whether it's Babylon or not. I certainly see a movement making very great strides into demolishing what was.
Sure. I think there's a mother of Babylon and a daughter of Babylon, isn't there?
That's the way I would read.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So I agree that it was an ancient city. It definitely is a movement. Like I was talking about, the practices of Babylon are perpetuated throughout all the countries through deception, through things that are pushed against the creator's behavior. Yeah. And this has, of course, been perpetuated by the priesthood, which is the Catholic Church, for so long now, that's why I've jokingly said the Catholic system for 1800 years has been just a big troll on humanity, because they basically are taking all the trappings of the faith and everything connected to the creator and his son, and then they're just twisting all of it with bad theology that doesn't match up to what the creator has actually said. And so you can trace some of this theology. Wes Blaze and I just traced back some of this theology last night on our program concerning the eternal conscious torment and hell concept. And so you can see that they're just pulling over from the Greeks and the Roman beliefs, which was Babylon. I mean, guys, the Greeks 300 years before Yeshua's day, Alexander the Great conquered all the region and the empire that was considered Babylon. And then the Greek Empire, he conquered all those regions to India. And then he went into Babylon in Assyria and actually declared that the capital of his empire. I don't think people kind of forget that in history, that you're like, wait a minute, like, why is this Greek dude trying to go make the capital of his empire over in Assyria? Like, that's not his homeland. He doesn't know people there. Bigger chance to get taken over in opposition, harder to create trade lines, like all this. But no, that's not when you're all changing power within the same group of rulers over the same empire that's always been. This is what, like, 300 years before Yeshua is 300 years after the days of Artaxerxes during the days of Ezra. Mm-hmm. So he ruled over 127 different provinces from Ethiopia to India, just like Alexander the Great. And you're like, well, wait a minute, this whole area is just changing hands, and so, because they're all worshiping the same false gods, they're all in the same clique, if you will, and they're all the rulers, that it's like, I don't doubt that these rulers of ancient days had their own version of a G8 summit, where they all got together, facts. And they are like, all right, well, we're going to hang out and talk about things, and figure out how we're going to rule our people and, most efficiently. And because ultimately you did have some rogue areas outside of the Babylonian Empire, like the Chinese, who were not a part of it, as far as I can tell. They have a long-standing history of being their own little kingdoms but they feuded with themselves, and the Japanese and the Koreans, and they had their own dramas and everything, and the Mongols. But ultimately, the Babylonian Empire since the days of Nimrod, going forward to the Romans, as far as an established territorial region, it wasn't just a single city. In fact, a lot of people don't realize from the days of Jonah, 100 years around the times of Jonah, the capital of Babylon changed from Nineveh to actual Babylon.
I remember you told me that. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember, yeah, we talked about that at one point. So little stuff like that. Whereas it is a city, but it is a geography, like Jason's saying, it is a practice of deception perpetrated on as many peoples as far reaching as it can go, because that particular deception and practices that they push on people, like we talked about at the beginning, it degrades the culture and makes them more susceptible to being taken over and oppressed. And this is why Yahweh comes in saying, hey, if you just do my behavior, it'll make you strong. You'll be blessed and not cursed. You'll be the head, not the tail. You'll be the borrower and not the lender. You don't have all these sicknesses and diseases like the nations around you. You'll be healthy. You'll be protected, and I'll strengthen. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Facts.
So he's asking people constantly to do his covenant behavior, but here comes Babylon constantly getting out of people's business. They don't leave people alone. They, like I call them, a troll. This is what First Enoch, I think it's chapter 91. It's talking about the righteous being persecuted, and it says like they just want to go somewhere where the unrighteous will just leave them alone. You know, and this is
Facts,
what we hear today, right? Yeah,
that's why we be moving out of the states so that we moving in. And stuff like. Hey, but Wes, real quick. So the mother and the daughter, break that down for me. So you said that you felt that there is a mother Babylon and a daughter Babylon.
Yeah.
Enlighten me.
So just as the Father has a Jerusalem on the earth, I can't. So I'll say what I can. There's the Jerusalem on the earth, and then Paul calls in Galatians 4:26 the mother above, Jerusalem above, which would be the New Jerusalem. In a similar fashion, the enemy has mimicked what the Father has designed, with there being a daughter Babylon on earth, and then there's a mother Babylon.
Do you think that maybe the mother is the actual landmass, and that the daughter could be the people?
That's not how I've come to interpret it, just in light of some information that
it's all good. Yeah, because I'm just asking. I'm just asking.
It almost sounds like that the mother would be what came before, and the daughter is what's going on now.
Well, it's interesting because Mother Babylon is what we're talking about in Revelation chapter 18. That's prophesied at the end of days when Yeshua returns. Mother Babylon is destroyed, right? So we still see that it's an operation in some regard. And what we're trying to decipher and talk about, is it an actual kingdom? Is it just a specific city? Is it a city yet to be built on the earth somewhere, right? You know, they're trying to talk about Neom. It's going to be 5 times the size of New York City or whatever, because they just got money to burn. But is that it? I don't know. But all I know is there's this interesting passage here in Yeshua's lifetime where, if you guys give me just a minute, I'll read this real quick. It says, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, if you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. But Jesus answered, it's written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple. So this is the second temptation, right? He's taken to the top of the temple. Devil says to him, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it's written, he'll command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Now, guys, what I love about this little temptation here is he's actually misquoting the Bible. The Satan is actually quoting the scriptures of Psalm 91 out of context. This is, I'm kingdom in context, right? So, like, this is what the Satan does all the time, right? He's always he's getting people to believe, snippets of the scripture, but out of context, and you're way off in the ditch, right?
Talk to him.
Doesn't it almost seem like the devil is being portrayed here is kind of on the pathetic side?
Well, he loses this encounter in all 3 tests, but there's other scriptures where he's done that, and men have not fallen for his nonsense, and he loses in those regards too. So,
and you're not wrong, Jason. He's really not as powerful as a lot of people have given him
it's
the
just
picture of.
Yeah, like looking at it from what he's saying, it was like, well, you're basically bullshitting.
Yeah, and in James 4:4, we're told, if you submit yourself to God, resist the devil. Excuse me, James 4:7. You submit yourself to God, resist the devil, and Satan will flee from you. So like he and the reason why I always say this is because Satan is like, he's like an attorney, he's like a cowardly attorney or a cowardly prosecutor, to the point where he's trying to get you to trip up and incriminate yourself. But the moment that you don't, he has to leave the courtroom because he got nothing. Because if he actually attacks you, then he's transgressed the law, the eternal holy law that's permeates throughout all of creation, heaven and earth, and he would face judgment. So he skirts around deceiving people by getting you to do the action, right?
With
He
the, like
doesn't
a
take
gazel.
anyone's hand and cause you to go out and kidnap somebody intentionally, right? He gets mankind to be deceived and do the things. He's subtle, right? I mean, this is exactly what happened in the garden with Eve. He got her to do the bad thing. He didn't like grab Eve's chin and start forcing the apple in her mouth, right? So this is where he's a coward. I mean, I'm not trying to.
He's smart, but he's far, far, far from all powerful by any means.
No, he's not.
You know?
He's not. So
Just they make a court comparison because that's exactly what both sides do. In fact, they take the things that's presented, but try to present it from their side to win. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the truth. And here it's clear, just as you said, that the devil is taking words and twisting them to get what he wants or it wants, however you want to look at that. But the truth is the truth, and that's that.
Yeah. And this is interesting here because this is Satan actually takes he recognizes who Yeshua is to the point where he reveals himself to Yeshua. But what he does with these three temptations is fascinating, because the first one, he's just like, all right, you're hungry, make some bread, you can do it, you got the power. And Yeshua's like, nah, I'm not I'm not going to abuse my power, I'm not going to do that. Second one's like, all right, well, I'm going to take you top of the temple, throw yourself down. He'll send his angels to help you. Then you won't, quoting Psalm 91 out of context. And actually, Psalm 91 is about Yeshua's second coming, not his first coming. It's about when he returns with powerful angels and starts defeating Satan and his minions, and how that's when he won't be ever. The angels will be protecting him. He won't be able to be destroyed. Mm-hmm. Verse 8. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. Now, in the book of Mark, or I think it's Luke or Mark, this passage, it says he showed him all the kingdoms of the world at a glance. Mm-hmm. And this is let me try to actually go there real quick, because this passage has troubled scholars and pastors for a long, long time, because they're trying to figure out, like, Luke 4:5,
Luke 10:18. Oh, well, no,
we're not. Yeah. And it says the devil took him up to a high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time.
That's right.
All right. So a lot of people like to say, oh, it's just a vision, right? He's showing him a vision, showing him all the king, because they, especially these pastors who still think we live on a ball. So they're like, well, of course he couldn't have shown him Australia from the Middle East, so he's showing him a vision, all the kingdoms of the world in a glance, or the farthest reaches of India, or whatever.
Even in the first century AD, there's more kingdoms than could have been seen.
Right. Even from the tallest mountain in the Middle East, or even from the tallest mountain in the world, you can't see all the kingdoms at a glance. It's physically impossible. Just even on a flat stationary plane, it's physically impossible due to the actual atmosphere that would build up, as well as the way your eyes works. Yeah. You can't see so far. So that's where people, regardless of what model of cosmology you believe, the shape of the land that you live on, they always fall back to this idea, well, it must have been a vision, right? To show them all the kingdoms of the world at one time on this very high mountain. Or he took them to Mother Babylon.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, yeah, I know, right? So let me read the rest of the passage, and then I'll take some questions, because this is again, people can disagree, but this is my understanding. Okay. So we go into, he says that, and the devil said to him, so after he took him to the high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time, the devil said to him, all this power I will give you, and the glory of them, for that is delivered to me, and to whomever I will give it. And if you therefore will worship me, all shall be yours. And Jesus answered and said to him, get behind me, Satan, for it's written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only you shall serve. So
that's interesting, Sean. I don't know this from the biblical text. What power is Satan or the devil supposed to actually have that he could possibly grant to somebody? And why would he want to grant it to anybody in the first place?
Well, we see him give the kingdoms through deception, he receives power from those who are allegiant to him, the kings of the earth, and he gives that authority to the beast in Revelation 13 to rule. And that's why it says the world worships after the dragon, but then the first beast gets all the authority of the dragon given to him by the dragon. So it's the same concept here. Of course, obviously Yeshua didn't fall for that. It's a deception. It's a false dichotomy anyway. But what's interesting here in Matthew, after he goes to this tall mountain and Jesus rejects his offer, in verse 10 it says, then Jesus said to him, get away from me, Satan, for it's written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only you shall serve. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. So a lot of people never ask, why did angels show up in this moment?
I just did. Why though?
Well, after 40 days and 40 nights, I think a human body might be struggling a little bit.
Right? So you'd think that's what a lot of people say, right? Well, he was hungry, right? So I'm like, okay, well, so what? Is this the end of that? Is this the end of it? So this is at the end of 40 days and 40 nights. And so now he's just, wherever he is, he's just going to grab some food immediately. How does he get down from this high mountain? Where is this high mountain?
Does it say?
And does mountain just mean what we in modernity think of as this land feature? Because from my understanding, mountain can be synonymous with a kingdom.
So I'm going to pull something up real quick. And we're getting a preview of episode or part 20 tonight.
Yeah, I'm my bad, man. I'm not trying to have you.
It was inevitable.
Hit him with the spoilers.
Yeah,
it's inevitable. But I'm going to go into greater depth when we get to the actual episode. But I'm just giving you guys a quick something to chew on to consider, because it's I can tell already you guys have no clue what I'm talking about, and that's okay. I'm going to try to give you a quick brief. Let me just pull this up real quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So, do you guys remember this? I'm going to make it larger so everyone can see it. So you guys remember part 5 of my Investigating Babylon series? You guys remember that?
It was a long time ago.
Talk about Olympus, home of the gods. So I go over for an entire hour and 28 or hour probably of the teaching to show that the ancient world spoke emphatically about the gods living in the sky in a piece of land.
That's exactly the video that I sent y'all before you had the Babylon discussion.
Yeah. Reason, Resin, I think it was called, the city.
Well, that's a speculation as far as what possibly, if it's being mentioned in Genesis 10, that's the one I think it's referencing. But ultimately, what I try to stress from the very first part of Investigating Babylon was that Babylon was not just a tower; it was a city, and there's other things that were built in addition to just this big tall tower. And the whole purpose of the tall tower, they believed they were in a biblical model of cosmology. They knew there was a firmament over them, and they were trying to get through heaven to the firmament, to get through it, to go attack God and take over his authority. So that's why they were essentially this is a simplified term, but the Tower of Babel was just a big ladder. It was just a big way to progressively get higher to get to the firmament. Obviously, they weren't going to do it. They weren't going to accomplish it, in my opinion. I think the firmament's much taller.
I agree.
If the Book of Jubilees is correct, then they only accomplished about 1.5 miles worth of building at the tower, right? Which still is very tall. We've never replicated that in modernity, but at the same time, they built more than just a tower, and that's what part people glaze over in Genesis 11 and Jubilees 10, is that it was more than that tower. They were building other things with it, and they had 40 plus years to do this. All the mankind had come together at this point with this one construction project. You can get a lot done in 40 years.
Right. Facts.
So this is where the ancient Indian culture that I've tried to keep talking about over and over and over in my Investigative
Babylon flying series. Saucers and all that. Yeah.
They had all kinds of tech.
All types of tech, bro.
And they had some of that tech, which we see replicated with the Vimanas, is what we would in modern times replicate with the Tel Aviv University demonstrated in 2012 at a science expo. It's called quantum levitation, quantum locking. And basically, it's a way that you can actually create an anti-gravity effect, and you can do it on a right. Yeah, no, right. You can do it on a small level. You can do it on a big level. Just depends on how you manipulate it, and depends on how much material you're working with. So, all the ancients, like I tried to show in that video, part 5, they all talked about literally a place in the sky where Zeus and all the other gods hung out. Their home.
Olympus. And they call it Mount Olympus, right?
Mountain Olympus. It wasn't just a big mountain in Greece. I know that modern day textbooks will try to say, well, would they think Mount Olympus is over in this island in the Greeks? And you're like, no, that's okay. So Mike, you have a question.
Yeah. All right. So you said they were able to build all this in 40 years, right? At this time.
Jubilees does.
Okay, right. So at this time, when they start building it, how many people are on the earth? Because it's not so much far away from Noah, right? So it's literally the descendants of Noah that are doing this. So how many people are inhabiting the place, and how many people are working on this, according to Jubilees, for 40 years? Because, I mean, it would have to be...
It doesn't say the number of people that were alive through that day, but it does say that if you do the math, it's several hundred years after the flood, so you've got time for them to populate greatly.
Excuse me. I've heard some lame things about this, and they talk about every child was twins and triplets, and just the fertility was just like unlike anything you've ever seen before, and these people were able to amass millions of people. And it's just like, to me, that seems really stretched. Okay. I mean, I'm not saying I don't. I'm just saying that it sounds like people are trying to force an idea.
Well, we have the same example in Goshen. But by the time 75 people went down into Goshen during the days of Jacob, until a couple 300 years later, you've got almost 1.75 to approximately 2 million people coming out.
Jews in Egypt.
Yeah, during the story of the Exodus.
Okay. Well, see,
like I said, counting of numbers. Well, think about Genesis chapter 10. All the boys that it lists off being born to Shem, Ham, and Japheth, they're having 7, 8 kids at a time. So if their kids had 7, 8 kids at a time, and their kids had 7, I mean,
so was it not monogamous? Were they having multiple wives? So if you're saying they're having 7, 8 kids at a time.
No. I mean, like in their lifespan, like the kids recorded in Genesis 10 to the different, descendants of Noah. There's 7 to 8 kids being born per descendant.
And people supposedly.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, and
their health was different.
Yeah, for what it's worth, there's a text that it could contain some historical accuracies. It talks about Nimrod assembling his princes and subjects, about 700,000 men. And so that's Jasher for you, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Another question is
I thought it was. Go ahead.
When it comes to the building of the tower, so once they get so high up, right? What the text says that they shoot arrows into the heavens.
That is Jasher.
If they have all this technology and they're trying to wage war, why are they shooting? Why are they shooting? Oh, that's Jasher.
Yeah, I apologize, brother. You're cutting out.
If they're trying to wage
right now
war against these arrows into the sky.
We got to hit him on a private chat.
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm sorry.
It's okay, man. I hear what you're asking. You don't have to repeat it, and that's why you don't hear me quoting from Jasher that often, or at all, hardly, because it's not the original Jasher as far as I've been able to find from textual manuscript, and I'm trying not to give away some Honor of Kings episodes coming up either. But ultimately, Jasher talks about a lot of things that are inconsistent with the rest of the scriptures, including Enoch and Jubilees, and that is one of the things in Jasher that makes you raise an eyebrow, because you're like, all right, clearly, like they had a ton of text talking about how they had advanced tech. Just even if you don't believe in Vimanas, which are a documented thing, just the idea to build a building at 1.5 miles tall, ask an engineer, that requires a higher level of knowledge intellect and building material technology that we can't even replicate today, or if we can replicate today, they haven't done it. Right, exactly. We've lost it. Jason, I can only see your top of your head. We've lost your main head. There you go.
Sorry, my
I'm sorry, I
the
brought
microphone out of the way.
It's my bad for bringing up Jasher, but it is just it said
it's all
something in
good.
reference to what.
Yeah, I'm looking
what
forward. I'm looking forward to that. To you and Ken tapping into Jasher, because I've heard a lot of people who tap into Jasher, and it's when you tap it. I mean, that whatever scrolls you consider divinely inspired are going to have a tremendous effect on your theology, right? I mean, just look at what the book of First Enoch has done for us, right? For a variety of different things. And I know people who believe that Jasher is divinely inspired. I'm not necessarily. I don't have too much of a perspective. I think it's got some interesting things in there, but I'm curious to see how you guys unpack that. That's going to be interesting.
Maybe you may just not like it.
Like I said, I don't have a dog in the fight. So
we'll see. We'll see how people react. But ultimately, there is a lot of ancient texts that talk about, and I'm going to be covering this in the next few episodes of my Investigate Babylon series, that talk about they not only had technology, but they had multiple small and large habitations in the air.
Mm-hmm. Not just flying machinery crafts, but flying like land masses
that they lived on. And this, guys, is predictive programmed in all forms of media today. And
think about the Avengers. What are the Avengers?
We're talking about even in Dragon Ball Z, guys. It's in everything.
Yeah, that's right. Namek.
That's right. It's in everything, man. It's in movies, it's in media, it's in video games, it's in cartoons, animations. Elysium is another example. Halo is another. It's there everywhere. And I think that's going to play a role in the future. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in my episodes. That's why it's called Mother Babylon. And in Isaiah, you have Daughter Babylon being talked about, the one on the ground, the one that's promised to get destroyed, never inhabited again. But yet Mother Babylon is still reigning over the kings of the earth up until the day Yeshua returns.
Mm-hmm.
So what did Satan tell Yeshua? He tells him, take you up here to this mountain, look at all these kingdoms. Only works on a flat circle stationary earth.
And then Yeshua says, go. Right.
Okay. So do you guys feel that specifically, what do you think occurred? Do you think Satan grabbed Yeshua with his physical hands and then flew up there? Or
sure.
Okay.
Sure.
That's interesting. Okay.
He's
that's technically how an angel is described to be, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, like, there's a lot we gloss over when we say that. Right.
Well, it's not like Satan just has cooties and just starts, he's not.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't let Satan grab me and take me anywhere if I could help it. Right.
Well,
that's why I say
Yeshua could destroy him and probably in any moment. So like,
facts.
He's not afraid.
I feel you. Okay. So in Revelation, would you say that the statement "flee from her, my people," that's something more allegorical? You don't believe that that's actually something where people are told to leave a particular area? If Mother Babylon is this levitating city, right? Because that opens up a cornucopia of more questions where we go back, right? We go back to Revelation. What is it, 17? And
let's look at the actual passage you're talking about, because I think the context will help us.
Okay.
So that's in verse 4. I'll put this on screen real quick.
I love it, Marlo.
Yeah,
keep up the questions. Yeah.
Oh, it's all good, Bubba. That's why I'm here, man.
I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities." So this is the previous context. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, "Babylon the great is fallen, is fallen." People would say, well, that's a metaphor for a kingdom being destroyed, right? Or is it? And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, "Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of unclean and hateful bird."
I thought all animals were made clean. No.
For all
Would that bird
nations,
be a phoenix by chance?
for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. So to me, this is talking about the system of Babylon being perpetrated over the kings of the earth and the nations and the merchants of the earth. So therefore, it can't be a specific geographical central location that he's telling them to flee from in the very next verse. Does that make sense?
Are there any other words used for Babylon other than Babylon? Like, are there any synonyms, I guess you would call it?
I've
I would
never
call-
seen one.
I'd say the great and burning mountain. At one of the trumpets, no? Could it be?
Well, yeah, but I'm as far as like the actual name
Chaldea,
Babylon,
right?
Right, a name, no. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe I should ask a deeper. Is that what you're asking for, Jason? Is like, are you talking about a metaphorical synonym or like an actual?
Well, I guess both, because well, the reason why I ask is in what other contexts could the concept of Babylon be being used, like a more literal sense or in a more philosophical sense?
And well, I hear that. Guys, tell me if I'm reading this wrong. Am I?
Well,
Is this
this
talking
is-
about a Babylon who has control
is
and
good.
interaction
This-
with all the
this-
kings of the earth and the nations and merchants of the earth?
say that again. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bubba.
Is this talking about a Babylon that's a specific geographical city, or is it in this particular passage right here? Is it talking about a Babylon who's had interaction with all the kings of the earth and the merchants of the earth?
The latter.
Right. So this is why I think that the context of the passage tells us how to interpret the use of the word Babylon in this passage.
So
Yeah,
do you,
that's what I was
so
getting at.
when you're looking at the fall of Babylon in that chapter, are you tapping into the bowls of wrath, the last bowl of wrath that's poured out?
No, well,
And,
did you
and
see
saying
my
that that's the
did you see my
Go ahead, I'm
recent
sorry, Bubba.
video? Because
I
I got
missed
some
it.
graphics I can show you.
yeah. Let's see those.
So this is just my interpretation. If you guys have, you're welcome to share your thoughts as well. But I'll show you my interpretation of the bowls, trumpets, and seals real quick. And I've got them in little charts, so it doesn't take long to show you. So let me just get to that real quick.
Is my connection any better?
It
Sounds-
appears to
yeah, it
be
sounds
for the
good.
moment.
Sounds better.
Good.
At least
Welcome back, brother.
It's not breaking up. All
We're
right,
gonna
so-
finish some songs soon, guys. We're gonna finish some music.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
Man, I'm ready.
All right. 1 second, guys. I'm trying to get this to pull up. All right. So all right, 1 second. Uh-oh.
That wasn't code for anything, Jason. We actually make music.
Oh, I do too. So.
Right on.
Was the tower destroyed or no?
Yeah.
It was.
Yes, it was destroyed like Genesis 11 and Jubilees
Like
talks
the entirety of it, or just portions of it?
Well, the city and the tower were destroyed, but that, that was the things that are highlighted in the chapter, but there's other things that they're building that the ancient world talks about that they were using and had used and had built as a part of the kingdom and empire of Babylon.
So the city is not a portion of the tower.
No, it's differentiated.
It's a separate thing. Okay.
Yeah, but both the city and the tower seemingly were destroyed.
When I first was presented with this idea, the way I understood it was that the middle and the bottom portions were destroyed and the top of the tower remained up in the sky. And I was like, man, that is really hard to grasp,
Sure. Unless you see all the ancient people documenting and talking about how the gods lived in peace land in the sky, and they're like, oh, okay.
Right, but hearing you say that it wasn't the top of the tower that was left floating, that it was a separate situation that was built. Now that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, I got you. I see what you're saying, and I'm gonna show that when I talk about ball top towers in part 19. So again, I'm just trying to touch on some things tonight. I don't, like I said, I don't want to just go into 2 full episodes because we don't have time. But so what I got on screen here is this is the seals and the different verses that they're mentioned, and a lot of people get really confused by the seals because they think that they forget that there's no chapter and verse breaks in the Greek. And so that was English translators that put in those chapters and verses in the Greek. So when you're reading through these passages and you get to that seventh seal in Revelation 8:1, and then the very next passage in Revelation 8:2, it says that these trumpets were given to these angels, right? Well, that connecting word there in Revelation 8:2 is this word kai. And use the link and get in here, Mikey. That's why we gave you the link, bro. So that's where people forget that the word kai in Greek means and. It doesn't always mean, a chronological and now next happens, right? It's not a successive connector. So this is where he's seeing separate visions, and this is the way I understand it, is that he sees the first 7 seals and they go from start to completion over 42 months. And then he sees a separate vision where they're having, let me get through this. So this happens over 42 months. And then he sees that separate vision starting in Revelation 8:2, where the angels are handed these trumpets and start blowing these trumpets off over a certain amount of time. So when you follow the trumpets and you add up all that time, it's also the same 42 months that's happening with the seals. So that the end of the end of the seals is happening at the end of the trumpets as well. So
and this is the same 42-month reign of the beast.
Right. The same 42 months when the beast is revealed, this character that is given the authority of Satan. It's the same 42 months.
So tribulation's only 3.5 years, guys.
So real quick, Revelation 8.
Yeah.
Is that, let me pull it up because I'm slow, man.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so where do you place this half an hour of moment of silence? Because in verse 8, go ahead, Bubba. I'm sorry.
In Revelation 8:1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the moment that this right before the 7th trumpet's being blown, which happens on the last day, which is the day that Yeshua returns, and it's also the same day that all these bowls are poured out. So imagine this: 7th seal, because remember in Revelation 5, who's opening these seals?
Christ.
That's right.
The
He
Lamb.
opens the seal. There's a half an hour of intermediate time, and I don't know if that's because he's putting down the scrolls and getting on his horse. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's what's going on for that 30 minutes.
But a moment of silence for the
there
wrath.
It seems like the 7th seal is opened.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was a moment of silence, and that either during that moment of silence or after that moment of silence, the trumpets are distributed. I can see. I mean, that's the perspective I've always had, and I can understand why people would think that. For me,
that's what I was trying to say. Is this?
Oh, go ahead, Bubba.
People will try to. This is what people have always classically done, and this is why I would suggest that we have to remember this. The Greek connector word is not always, in chronological connection, but that he's seeing different visions and piecing them together, and it's only because the translators have put this as the next verse makes you think that it's because they put it in chapter 8 and it's the next verse after verse 1, so they immediately think, oh, it must be connected. That's the way the English mind looks at these passages. But if you took out all the verses in the chapters and just read it, you would have to immediately
I see what you're saying.
You'd be forced to decipher, okay, is this the same vision? Did the sealed visions end, and now I'm looking at a different vision of these other angels that are given trumpets and they're about to blow their trumpets? So that's what I would suggest people do, is a challenge to anyone watching that maybe
take out the numbers.
Well, just the idea of take the seals, put them together, and add up the time that it's spoken of. Take the trumpets, put them together, add up the time it's spoken of, and then I would suggest all the bowls are happening on the day of the Lord. That's why it's called the bowls of wrath, and the day that Yeshua returns is called the day of wrath, and it is the wrath of the Lamb. That's why the bowl judgments are so severe, all happening on one day. It's a big day.
Yeah.
The whole creation is being shook, heaven and earth, all the foundations, everything. And the firmament's rolling open. Him and the warrior angels are coming down to fight the kings of the earth, the dragon, the beast, the false prophet. All these characters, they're ready to make war against the Lamb. And this is why his wrath, and this is why the resurrection is so important, in that it happens at that last trumpet, the end of the 7 trumpets, which is the initiator in Revelation 11, verse 11, of Yeshua beginning to reign, that he's going to come down and actually at that moment.
Play that Shield of Zion clip.
So Revelation 16, where we're looking at the seventh angel pouring out his bowl into the air, and out of the temple came a loud voice from the throne saying, "It is done." When the great city is split in verse 19, the great city split into three parts, and the cities of the nations collapsed. God remembered Babylon the Great and gave her the cup filled with the wine of the fury of his wrath. Every island fled away, and the mountains could not be found. How do you exegete that? This great city in verse 19, do you believe that that's the Babylon the Great?
Yeah, the great Babylon came in remembrance before God. But in my and
Right. That's what I'm asking.
It came in remembrance, but it's all these nations that are a part of her system are being destroyed on this day.
The great city split into three parts. So what city is that? Because it's being split, whatever it is, it's being split into three parts. Do you have any exegete on that?
The great city, personally, I think is Jerusalem in this particular passage.
Daughter Jerusalem on the ground.
Yeah, just as referenced in Revelation 11 as the great city.
Okay.
Which is why it differentiates later in the verse to call the cities of the nations, and then Babylon the Great, or the Great Babylon, came into remembrance. Because actually, I'm going to explain how Babylon was already destroyed before this.
I think that I don't think that is so. The great city split into three parts, and the cities of the nations collapsed. God remembered Babylon the Great and gave her the cup filled. See, it really just depends on how you read it. Like, see, if I change the modulation of my voice, the great cities. You see what I'm saying, though?
Sure.
So I think that great city, because Babylon the Great is also called the great city in Revelation, right?
Where?
Let's go back to. Is it Revelation 17?
17.
Hey, and that's all right, Mikey Jenny. We'll catch you next time, brother. Much love. I'm going to step away for 2 seconds. I'll be right back, guys.
All right.
Okay, Bubba. So I believe verse 18, the woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. The woman is the prostitute that's being spoken of from verse 1 down.
That's right. And I think this is the Vatican.
Understood. Yeah. See, here's the thing. I frustrate people because I don't have a stance yet. Mm-hmm. I have some ways that I lean. Yeah. But once again, when I'm looking at Ezekiel, the last chapters in Ezekiel, I see a lot going on in the Middle East. And I don't know how that connects with the Vatican. I haven't figured that out. You've got some people who've got some real interesting exegetes on Second Esdras and how all that stuff ties together with the eagle prophecy, and Babylon and Asia are called out by name and stuff like that. But I get confused because, like I said, there's so much going on. And then, we got to talk about Nebuchadnezzar's statue, the legs and the feet. We've got to talk about the fourth beast. We've got to talk about the horn, the Antichrist, the man of lawlessness. And so it's
Daniel
a lot going on.
Speaks in large swath of overviews, whereas Revelation starts getting into some specific details.
Facts.
So when we go here and we look at this context, that's where I would say that he said unto me, the waters which you saw where the whore sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So it gives you the translation of what the waters are. It gives you the translations of who this whore is. She sits upon the beast, and it is this city whom it's put into the heart of the beast to turn on her and devour her once her purpose is done, basically. So this is why, to me, when the beast shows up, he's going to turn on the Vatican, because that like what I said, that's been the priesthood, been doing the dirty work all this time for deception, the evil priesthood. But when their purpose is done, that's the city of Seven Hills is destroyed, and that's
that's interesting. Okay, so but if that's the exegete, then what are we to do with the Mount Olympus concept? Because the beast.
That's not.
Go ahead, Bubba.
Yeah, that's not the city of Seven Hills.
I agree. So which is Babylon the Great? Because according to this seems like it would fall into the narrative of the city of Seven Hills. If Babylon the Great, right, says right there in verse 5, the name written on her forehead was a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes. If we're tapping into that to say that that's the mother Babylon,
well, okay. So you want to go up to verse?
Or maybe, 5, I mean, maybe if because I don't know where the term mother of Babylon would be found. I don't know. I've never written that in my notes.
So it says mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now, this is who's the king of Babylon? Maybe we should define our terms. Would we agree that the king of Babylon is the beast?
I mean, we can say that. I mean, it doesn't explicitly say that, but we could say that.
But this female personification of this woman that's called a whore, she's riding on top of the beast.
Facts.
Right? And then on her forehead is her allegiance. Right? Just like we're getting the seal on our forehead for our allegiance to Christ.
Facts.
So
It's
this
almost
is
reminds me of the Baphomet concept.
yes, yeah, exactly. So that's why, you've got all this imagery of Baal and Dagon and all that on the
Right.
priesthood of the Catholic priests.
Yeah, I think
right?
their hat is like the Pope
Dagon.
has the Dagon. Yeah.
Dagon's mitre hat. So this is, like I would say, that the actual mother Babylon above versus daughter Babylon on the ground below, if we're getting specific on actual cities, I don't think it's being referenced. I don't think mother Babylon, as far as a specific, but it's telling you who her allegiance is to. And I would agree with that the whore's allegiance is to mother Babylon the Great, mother of harlots, abominations of the earth. But as far as then it goes on to explain who she is and what she's responsible for, because it is a ruling, it is, the Vatican, like all priesthoods in the ancient world, they were a part of the ruling class, if not the kings of their nations. That was why priesthood was so important in the ancient times. That's why Roman Catholics became the priests that pushed themselves on to believers in the 1st and 2nd century and started persecuting them to get them to follow their mystery religion of ecumenicalism. What's up, Mike? Did you have a question?
Yeah. Do y'all care if I do like a little timeline spiel real quick? Because I'm trying to.
Well, let me finish answering his question real
now,
quick, and then we can just give an example away.
Yeah.
So what I'm just to say, as far as we mentioned this idea about the ancient world having tech and having the ability to have something actually perpetually in the sky. And even to this day, people struggle to figure out what causes eclipses.
Right. Facts.
And then when we do see a actual long-standing eclipse whose shadow goes across the entirety of the United States in 2017, its shadow only is 70 miles or 200 miles in diameter. It's not half the globe, right? It's a much smaller object. So this idea that there is a differentiation between the city of the Vatican and its priesthood that is in allegiance to the Babylon, because it came from, the whole Roman Catholicism came from the Empire of Babylon, versus the actual physical place of Mother Babylon. So there's going to be two different destructions that Revelation talks about. And then I think, to answer your question, I think that great city mentioned in Revelation 18 is the same one in Revelation 11 that also is the ground-based Jerusalem, where the two witnesses are prophesying for 42 months. That's what that earthquake hits and splits it into 3 parts.
Okay, so you feel that that's literal Jerusalem.
Because all that's getting destroyed anyway.
So Revelation 17, you believe that that's the Vatican. Do you believe Revelation 18 is also the Vatican? Where Babylon is.
Yeah, when it gets to Revelation 18, that's what I was saying. Very different language.
Right, exactly. But see, that's why I get confused, because when I read, like, when the sea captains, the merchants and all that, they're weeping that this city got destroyed. That comes across to me that they know that this city exists because they're weeping that it got destroyed, right? And I'm just saying my exegete, my perspective, right?
So if my theory holds up and a thing considered a mountain falls out of the sky, you think it'd be noticed?
It would be noticed, but would people be like, "Oh man, that was my money right there"? You see what I'm saying? It seems like
that right there
Bubba.
Is why I say we have at least another 50 to 70 years. Think about it. Look at all the predictive programming that's in all forms of media for the last 50 years. What are they doing with every other form of predictive programming that we have already recognized and noticed? They pay it off. They make it come to some sort of payoff for them. Whether it's the alien deception, whether it's the, just pick your programming, right? They do something with it at some point. And when you guys, when I show you all the programming that you have been watching this whole time and probably never noticed, that they're going to make this payoff, and it has to do with the arrival of Apollyon.
What sort of economy do you think will be established if this city is revealed as alien or whatever? Because he said that they'll weep over the loss of the mercantile and all that. So if this alien city is revealed, what kind of economy are they going to establish? You know what I'm saying? To where people would weep over the loss of it.
Yeah, remember, it's a point of authority as well, because it rules over the merchants of the earth, the kings of the earth. So if people see their point of authority destroyed, they're gonna think that all the trickle down is destroyed as well. So I'll get
that
into it.
verse,
Greg.
does
I
it mention
apologize,
something
guys.
about human trafficking? Does
In
it?
chapter 18, verse 20, in chapter 18.
So this would probably tie into your belief that these sacrifices would be reinstated, right? Because I think you believe that it's actually going to get back to.
Well,
right?
they've never stopped.
So what if
but
that's
I'm
the
saying is,
economy that's established? All right. I mean, publicly though, isn't that what you think? That it's going to get so bad that people are going to actually be involved, like on a large scale. It's going to be known that this is the practice, right?
yes, yeah.
So what if that's the
people are gonna-
economy that's established?
I don't. Well, it's already an
Trafficking.
economy. It's already an economy right now. But as far you're asking,
Right.
if it becomes public knowledge, how will that affect? I mean,
Right.
to billionaires, they're already trafficking in people as it is. So
Yep.
the people
Yep.
that are a part of that. I'm not saying every billionaire is a part of that, but there definitely seems to be synonymous. But
yeah,
there's
so
all these other.
if these aliens came and said, "This is what you need to be doing," like we're the gods. This is the true religion.
Mhm.
The Bible's just it's not real. This is the true religion, and this is how you should practice this religion. If the aliens came and said that, what choice would many people have, right? If it was forced. Is that kind of how you think it'll play out? Is that they'll
I
come
think
and institute a religion?
I think Revelation 13 tells us, both with the first and second beast, that they do force people into their system of economy.
Facts.
And the false beast, the false prophet, the second beast, deceives people with signs and wonders, specifically a specific sign that we see in the Old Testament, which is used to dedicate a temple, which is calling fire down from heaven. Now, is that a directed energy weapon that he's using to deceive people? Maybe. I don't know. Is he doing it through some other form of magic? I don't know. Is it blue beam? Is it a projected hologram in the sky? Maybe. I don't know. The point is, he deceives them with lying signs and wonders, like the text says in chapter 13.
Mhm.
And he deceives them with a sign directly related to a priestly duty in a temple, and because they're installing a system of worship. And yes, an economy is attached to that system of worship.
And a system of worship would have correlated with it a temple service.
Right.
I would suggest that's going on right now.
Right.
You think it's happening right now?
I wouldn't disagree.
Yeah, I
Like
do.
the second beast is here doing lion signs and wonders.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think the concept of getting the deceptions in place and getting people malleable to concepts is absolutely happening right now.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I agree. And that's
I would
why
say
think
that they
this
do
whole,
two
This whole
things.
Rona thing is
They've
a
got
is a
social engineering,
precursor.
and then they've got sympathetic magic. They use both those concepts, and they are wielding them like a mighty sword against the vast majority of the people. There's an interesting thing I listened to a couple of weeks ago from Aldous Huxley from a 1962 presentation, and he said 20% of the people are gonna absolutely believe what you're pushing on them. 20% of the people are not gonna buy it at all, but that other percent, that 60%, with just enough effort, they're going to go right along. There's your 80-20 rule right there. That's more than enough to bury the 20% that aren't going along with your bull crap.
Unfortunately, we've seen that in the last year and a half.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm getting at. They are baffling people with nonsense, absolute nonsense. I mean, there's literally next to no evidence to substantiate any of the stuff they're saying, and they're actually to the point where they're entering lies into official United States public records now. I saw one today that a hacker friend of mine sent me. Blatant lie entered into the record, and I was like, what that woman just said, Elizabeth Warren, it's a complete and utter lie. That is not true what she said, yet that went right into the record. So if anybody does happen to win this, at least this part of it, they've got plenty of evidence to use against these people.
Real quick,
Ministry of Truth.
Marlo, I covered a
What's up,
whole
Bubba?
lot in a short amount of time. So and this is not to put you on the spot, but I can see your brain going. So
I'm kind of listening to what you guys are saying, but I'm also thinking of some other things I wanted to ask. But go ahead, Bubba.
So I just explained a whole bunch of things that you may not have heard before, from my interpretation, my understanding of these passages. What if you could restate in 2 or 3 sentences what you think I've said? What do you think I've said?
I think that, I think that one of the things that you said is you believe that Revelation 11, you believe that the great city is talking about Jerusalem now,
Where the two witnesses are?
where the two witnesses are for the 40 for the
40
three and a half years.
Yeah, of their testimony.
You believe that the trumpets are actually not chronologically after the seals being the distribution of the trumpets. You don't believe that that's chronologically after the seals being broken.
I think they're happening at the same time.
Synonymous,
You think that that's
right?
you think
Yeah.
that they're you think that they're a one-to-one correspondence basically. Go ahead, Bubba.
Apollyon rules for 42 months. The two witnesses testify against him for 42 months.
Okay.
The seals are opened over 42 months. The trumpets are blown over 42 months.
Okay.
And then at the end of that 42 months, the 7 bowls are poured out.
So you believe that after the 42 months. Now, so I'm assuming out of the 7-year period, you would place that on the last 3.5 years, which would make sense, right? Because at that last 3.5 years, Christ makes his.
You remember what happens at the 7th trumpet, the last trumpet, like 1 Corinthians 15:51 says, that last trumpet, the dead in Christ shall rise.
And he
That's
comes in.
especially-
Well, First Thessalonians, I think, says
Also
he meets them in the
chapter
air.
4. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
Bubba.
but the qualifier is that last trumpet.
The last trumpet. I would agree.
The last trumpet. So what happens
Go
at
ahead.
the end of
I'm
the
sorry.
42 months? At the end of the 42 months of Revelation 11, where the two witnesses are doing their testimony for 42 months, what happens at the end of that time period with those two witnesses?
Well, they're killed, right? And then they come back to life.
They're resurrected.
Yeah.
So what happens?
Okay, I see what you're
What
saying.
happens
I
at
see
the
what
end of
you're
that
saying.
42 months?
I see what you're saying.
That 7th trumpet's blown.
No, that's a dope. Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. Okay.
See what I'm saying? So that's
Mhm.
that's your key, if I could put it like that. That's your skeleton key, is that last 7th trumpet for the resurrection. It's the return of Yeshua. All these things have culminated. Bowls of wrath are pouring out. This is why Isaiah 26:19-21 says we have to be taken up to our rooms, away and hidden in our rooms, away after we've been resurrected. The angels, Matthew 13:30, we're being taken as wheat to the barn, so that we are getting away from the wrath of the Lamb, away from the indignation of the Lord, as Isaiah 26:21 puts it.
That's how people come up with pre-trib raptures. They
Right.
they kind of tap into that narrative.
But
Now you're not a pre-trib rapture.
No, because they
proponent, are you?
ignore the last trumpet word.
Understood.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And
There's a qualifier, like Yeshua returns at the last trumpet. So you can't, there's no other time for this pre-trib, post-trib, like mid-trib. It's, the last trumpet, Yeshua returns, the
A
resurrected saints
secret
happen, they're
riddles, what
taken
some of
away.
them say.
What's that? Sorry, brother. You're breaking
Some
up.
of them believe in a secret return.
Yeah, I know. I've never found that in scripture either.
Where are they getting that from, though? Are there only certain sects of Protestant Christianity that go for that? Because I've heard all these concepts, but I don't know where they're getting it from.
So real quick, so you put all three together: the bowls, the trumpets, and the seals. All three
But
of
the
those
seals and the
concepts.
trumpets happen at the same time over a 42-month time period, and then at the very end of that, the
Is when the
7
bowls-
bowls are poured out at the same time after the 7th trumpet is blown.
The
On
wrath.
that day,
That's
on
why.
that day, Yeshua returns. It's called the wrath of the Lamb.
And you're saying that the saints get resurrected so that
And-
they can be
That's what
away
happens
from-
first. The first thing that happens that initiates the day of the Lord is that 7th trumpet. That's when the resurrection happens. Isaiah 26 and Matthew 13, angels come and they take the resurrected saints away to the New Jerusalem, which is yet to descend. It's still above. See, because they're taken off the earth where all this destruction is about to happen, because they just got new resurrected bodies. You need to be away from all that destruction. And then here comes Yeshua and the warrior angels to fight at Armageddon in the Valley of Jezreel, to fight against the kings of the earth and the forces that have combined to fight them. And they come down and take care of business. And then meanwhile, the bowls are being poured out. People are cursing. This is why there's a lot happening. This is why we did 20 episodes on the Road to Rescue, going like piece by piece and showing people all these things and how they line up, and
which are available on Messenger of the Most High YouTube, by the way.
That's right. That's right. They've been. I think both Mike and Marlo froze, but they froze in some very.
Mike's here.
Oh, Mike's here. Okay. Marlo froze in a very.
Hey, Sean, what do you make of the last 1,000 to 2,000 years? As far as
history?
Yeah. So you have the fall of Jerusalem, then you have there's the persecution period, then there's the Roman Church development, then you have the fall of Rome, then you have the Roman Catholic Church, which basically rules the world for a good 800 years or so, 1,200 years. I don't know. And then you have the fall of the Roman Church, and you have the Age of Reason and Enlightenment. And a strange conclusion that I've come to is that the Roman Church would have never lost their grip over the world had it not been for the secret societies. The secret societies caused the papacy to lose its power, and then now you have the Industrial Revolution, and then technology. So what's been going on these last 2,000 years? Like, if all of this stuff in Revelation is yet to be, then what was all of this? And then why did Rome lose its grip? Well, see, what I'm saying is it lost its grip in the sense that it had people in their hands, to the masses, to where you can't learn, you can't read. It was spiritual despotism. Like, they had everybody eating out of the palm of their hand. Like, I'm talking about the individuals throughout the world.
I think you're just,
and like he said, people were trying to preserve like geometry and
hey, Mike, you're breaking up really bad. Brother.
Did lose a big.
I don't know if you can hear me, but we're really struggling to hear your sentences. Sorry, brother. I think
whatever you did get out of it. Can you answer it?
Yeah. Well, I think there's an assumption being made, for one, and that is that what you said, that Rome had such a tight-fisted control over the entirety of the world. We do have this documentation of persecution of believers, and that Rome was a dominant empire to about the 6th century, and then it split off with Constantinople becoming a new capital and different things like that. And that ruled for another almost 1,000 years as the Eastern Empire of Rome. But what people seem to forget is that all the South American tribes that were across the ocean flourishing and doing their thing, not controlled by Rome, all the Chinese people, Korean, Japanese, Mongols, people in India, not controlled by Rome during those time periods.
Muslims.
Like, these are billions of people over all that time, that, and the Muslim nations as they've merged. So I think there's respectfully, I think there's a big assumption in what you're saying as far as the power and the scope of the power you're giving to the Catholic Church. That's why I've been trying to save this whole night about the idea of Babylon as an empire that influences a lot of nations. But even like I said earlier, Babylon, the leaders of China and Japan in ancient days have enforced the same idolatrous practices under their people, but they were never under the control of the Babylonian Empire, as far as I understand. But they were in trade with them, and they agreed with how the Babylonian Empire subjugated their subjects in their provinces.
Have you seen what
Go ahead.
My bad. Have you seen what 2nd Ezra 15 says about Asia?
Go ahead. Well, you remember Asia was also called Turkey before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. Before the Asian continent was relabeled by the West.
It was just Asia
Minor over time as well.
Okay. Yeah, verse 46 says in 2nd Ezra 15, "You, Asia, who share in the splendor of Babylon and the glory of her person, woe to you, miserable wretch, for you have made yourself like her. You've decked out your daughters for prostitution to please and glory in your lovers."
Yeah.
Glory of her person.
like I said, the practices have been in all these quote unquote pagan nations, and I hate to use that word because I think the Catholic Church kind of pushed that word, but these nations that were not in covenant with Yahweh. So they're not doing the behavior of Yahweh. They're not doing his covenant behavior. They're not trying to keep the commandments. They're not trying to, do all the things expounded upon in the scriptures as far as what is good moral behavior in a society. Instead, they're doing all this idolatrous worship that goes with these horrific practices that we can see documented in history by all these ancient nations throughout time as they did idol worship. It was synonymous throughout the world. That doesn't mean that all those different nations were a part of specifically the Babylonian Empire throughout all those times. If that makes any sense.
There's something
So
about
you
the
just you believe that these 2,000 years though is basically just set up, right? Like there's been no fulfilled prophecy within the last 2,000 years. All it is basically setting up for Babylon.
Well, let me this is a great question. Let me ask you, what prophecy do you think has been fulfilled in the last 2,000 years?
I don't know. I look at the history, from Christ to, and I examine all of the things that have taken place, and there's some very curious and peculiar changes that have taken place on the world in the last 2,000 years. And I just, in America being a big one, like this whole idea of democracy, and, what does that mean as far as biblical? Like, is that a part of biblical prophecy? Is that a part of the timeline? Is that a part of, is democracy just an evolved form of the original Babylon? Because I don't know much about. But if you think about it, though,
rehash of the Greek city-states.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I don't know much about Persia, but I know that Babylon was communism. And then I don't know much, like I said, I don't know much about the Medo-Persia Empire. But then you have the Greek, which was a
city-state.
Democratic ideas started to form. And then have Rome, which was like a combination of an emperor, but also a senate to check them, right? So then you have real democracy starting to form. And then now, fast forward, 1,500 years or whatever, you have this new idea of democracy, an evolved form of it.
Well, if I may, so we don't get lost in semantics. Democracy is technically not what we are. We're a representative republic, and there is a lexiconical definitional difference to that. And so we have democratic ideals and values, but technically, as supposedly the Constitution was supposed to be carried out, be a representative republic. So I was a civics nerd in school.
Democracy meaning mob rules. 51% can override 49%, whereas we have representational government or a democratic republic where we elect people to take care of things for us. Hypothetically.
Yeah. To answer your question in a broad stroke, I think what happened in the past 2,000 years is what we've seen is in a macrocosm, what we're seeing in a microcosm example, what's been happening in China since 1950s. And China has been figuring out a way to enforce communism rule, but allow the people to actually have a system of trade and free exchange to where they have a semblance
free enterprise,
of a democratic free enterprise economy, which will allow them to actually sustain themselves. They learned the lesson of Russia, which self-imploded economically. And so they still have a communism, but they're allowing, we need to let these people give some hope and work and make some profits. We can't just be taking everything like the Russians did. And, history of Russia is horrible, man. They were just, they literally chewed off their own legs. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. So I think what was happening over the last 2,000 years is, as Christianity, as the belief in Yeshua was flourishing like wildfire from Britain all the way to India and being passed around everywhere, and believers were springing up in great numbers, that it was causing destabilization to empiric concepts. This is just like we see. Well, I'm not. That's too deep. Let me go. And I'm not saying you couldn't handle it. I just don't want to get lost. I don't want the audience to get lost. So let me say it like this. So it's twofold. We have believers, I truly believe that Yeshua changed the game. When he resurrected and ascended to his priesthood, as the scriptures talk about, he ministers in the temple on our behalf, and through his priesthood, he has access to the Spirit of God, unlike any other priest of Israel ever. So he can give it as he wills. This is what Peter tries to explain in Acts chapter 2, verse 32 through 35. And as a result of that, he now, even though there's no temple in Jerusalem anymore, believers could be spread out all across the world and still receive the power of God given to them in a, in a wonderful benevolent exchange of faith receiving favor, faith receiving grace through Yeshua's priesthood. And he gives you that power so that you can, be effective in your life and walk out righteous behavior. No matter where you are in the earth at all times, like it's this beautiful exchange that we have greater access to the throne room through Yeshua than we've ever had in Israel, right? What's cool about that is that that was flourishing in great numbers quickly as the Roman Empire was having some issues. It was struggling to keep its power over the people. Obviously, you just referenced earlier in AD 70, the Great Rebellion in Jerusalem, to which they came in and squashed everybody, okay? That also happened with the Huns and with, all these other people in different regions that were struggling to control or invade and enforce their will upon. And so their empire as it was could not be managed. It was too big, it broken up. So they, just like China, had to take someone else's failure and learn. The kings of the earth, the Vatican, and everyone that was ruling the empire of Babylon had to realize, all right, well, it's just not feasible for us to literally force everybody across all these different regions of country and culture to do exactly what we want. We'll let them flourish in their own lands, but we'll keep pushing the social degradation appropriated into their own cultures so that they're easier to rule, and we'll just rule them in the same way that they've ruled everybody, right? Which is they get you to transgress the covenant of Yah. They get you to do opposite behavior, destructive behavior, which makes you morally weak. It makes you psychologically weak. It makes your, if you want to go into the magnetic field your body puts off, it makes you weak in every regard when you do this destructive, sinful behavior. And therefore you're more easily subjective to oppression and control, no matter who is over you, whether it's a senator from Missouri or whether it's, form of a Gandhi in India. It doesn't matter, because you're not doing covenant behavior that leads to life and strength. So what I'm saying is, I don't think the last 2,000 years was just some weird moment in time that the enemy didn't know what to do. No, I think there's two things happening. The enemy is desperately trying to learn, how do we subjugate mankind with all these different cultures and not lose power, but yet let them think, that famous movie from the 80s, right? How do we let them be imprisoned in their own cities and not let them realize it, right? They've been trying to figure out how they can master that form of oppression. Meanwhile, we've got the idea of people that are breaking out of that behavior because they have a greater, quicker access to the Spirit of God through Yeshua's priesthood is also operating at the same time, which constantly thwarts these plans. Does that make sense? So you have 2,000 years of the Father, which is called the time of the Gentiles, bringing in all these, non-blood born, and even in faith in Yeshua, there's no Greek, there's no Jew. I understand that. I'm just trying to expound upon this idea of what's happening at the same time that Rome is restructuring, trying to figure out better ways to manipulate, control people throughout their own cultures. You have God working on the earth, and he's throughout all these nations, bringing in believers in masses everywhere, to even the Native Americans in what is now the United States, happening during the same time. My ancestors, the Chickasaws and the Cherokees. So this is where you have two things happen at the same time. It's a battle of kingdoms. I'm going to talk about this in part 21. So ultimately, the last 2,000 years has been the time of the Gentiles, and when the nations, which is what the word Gentiles means, when that has been fulfilled and all of them are coming in, this is when you're going to have all these events in Revelation to start to actually happen.
What verse is that from? The time of the Gentiles?
Yeah, let me
what book? Yeah, I want to hear that.
Chat is going crazy about the Trinity debate.
Oh man, the chat was talking about all kinds of things, not what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
There's a mention of it in Luke 21:24. about they shall fall by the edge of the sword, shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And so this is Luke 21:24. I personally believe it is talking about the AD 70 fall of Jerusalem. That's when Jerusalem's destroyed, trodden down, they're dispersed into all the nations. And then that kicks off this time of the Gentiles until that's fulfilled. And that's when Yeshua returns. So, I mean, that's getting us to the point of when Revelation starts, basically. And this is, I think, the same thing I was trying to say on Jason's broadcast a couple weeks back. Just say that I don't think that Revelation has actually started yet. I mean, the first 3 chapters are letters to different churches in Asia Minor. So that's kind of independent of the actual visions that start to happen about future events, which starts in chapter 4, leading up to chapter 22. I'm sorry, Marlo's trying to get back in. Hey, brother Marlo, thanks for coming back, man.
There he is.
I had to restart my whole situation, man.
Oh,
How much did I miss? I missed a whole bunch, huh? Y'all probably talking about something completely different.
Mike just asked me to recap the last 2,000 years of prophecy.
Can you repeat it? No,
he's asking those tough questions tonight. He's like, "Can you explain the last 2,000 years?" Let me find a few sentences here.
What I think is cool is we do get the time
And
qualifier.
I'm trying to give you like super quick cliff notes. And you may disagree on some specifics or whatever, but that's the way I see it. Is that we are in the
I
time
wouldn't say that
of
I disagree. I'm like Marlo. I don't have a stance, so I can't disagree with anybody. I'm trying to form my ideas, and I've seen a lot of stuff that's very convincing on all different sides. Whether it be preterist ideas or man, a lot of your stuff has like changed the game for me. But and then there's the idea of historicism, and that's.
Wasn't historicism just another name, a fancy name for preterism?
Well, I don't know if it's a partial preterist or if it's a full-on preterism, but basically it's that Rome fell, like in Daniel, and it was split into 10 kingdoms, which is Revelation, right? Which would have been the Huns, the Ravenna, Rome, like the city Rome, Lombards, all of those. It was supposedly 10 kingdoms, right? And then you had the 11th, which was the horn that had the eyes to see and the mouth to speak, which was more stout than his fellows. Basically a priest king, a prophet king, which was the Pope, the papacy, and
or
it's just a lot of it's really convincing, it's just like, how did it happen like that in history to where it really can line up,
okay,
with that. Then you have the urgency of Christ, talking about, okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry, brother. I think there's a delay. Hey, I just wanted to say real quick, I think what you just described when you're talking about historicism, I think you were describing the historicism view. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. So when you talked about the 10 kings and then the little horn, so you were saying that was the historicism view is that's the papacy, and then these 10 families that got power from the Roman Empire.
The little horn, the 11th horn, or the little horn would be the papacy. Yeah.
Okay. So what I would challenge on that interpretation is that's a specific interpretation, because when I put this up on screen, we can see in Revelation 17 this idea of, I'm sorry guys, I don't know what is it fluttering really fast when you guys saw it?
I saw it when you just had it up.
Okay, sorry. On my screen it was like fluttering really fast. So basically when it talks about this the 10 kings that give their power to the beast.
Mm-hmm.
So it says that they receive no kingdom as of yet.
Right.
So these families that you just mentioned, they're not actually kings over an actual, like they may be the behind the scenes power, but they don't actually have a kingdom. They have families that rule over, right? Okay, so we're in agreement with that. And then they give their power to the beast. So that's why I wouldn't be translating this particular use of the beast and that 10 kings. And I think that this beast being mentioned here is the same one in Daniel as the little horn.
Me too.
And I wouldn't I personally, I mean, it's okay if we disagree, but I personally wouldn't think that this is talking about the papacy.
Because it says the beast comes out at the 5th trumpet.
Right.
And then
Yeah,
we
I
have
can't
two
see-
Baruch's account. I think it's really interesting what Apocalypse of Baruch 67 says. But the king of Babylon will arise, who has now destroyed Zion, and he will boast over the people, and he will speak great things in the heart of the presence, in the presence of the Most High, which is exactly what's spoken of the little horn.
Is that
Zion being
is that an eschatological verse, or is that specific to that time period? Because Baruch was a scribe of Jeremiah, right? They were in Babylonian captivity. I'm not too familiar with Second Baruch. I haven't delved into it that much. So how is there any other language in that stanza or wherever that's at to specifically know that that's talking about something future and not something immediate? Because I think people do the same thing with Jeremiah. 51. I don't believe Jeremiah, the latter chapters of Jeremiah have anything to do with eschatology. It speaks very specifically about the kings of the Medes and the Babylon. We know based on Nebuchadnezzar's statue in his dream, the successions of empires, right?
Right.
And
So
so
that's listed in Daniel as well. The Medes took over.
facts, right? So do we know that those texts in Second Baruch are eschatological?
Yes,
Sorry, that was long-winded.
You're good. It's during the 12 waters of the visions of end times, mostly. Well, the latter part of them is.
I gotta check that out.
Yeah, 2 Baruch 67.
Good looking out, Bubba.
Yeah, that's why I asked earlier. I was like, can we qualify who the king of Babylon is?
Right.
Even though, I mean, and here's where it gets crazy, right? Because, like Marla brought a great question up earlier, talking about, when we're differentiating between Babylon on the ground versus this reference of Mother Babylon being over many, many merchants of the nations and kings of the earth versus an actual city on the ground. So we're talking about a reach and influence. And then, Westblade's brought up a verse where it's, while prophesying about end time events, mentions this king that will arise out of Babylon being in the same vein as the one that destroyed during Zion during the days of Baruch. Also, you got Isaiah 100 years before Baruch in chapter 14 talking about this king of Babylon going down to Sheol and having other kings of the nations rise to meet him and saying, wasn't this the great king that caused the nations to tremble and, all this stuff like that. So, yeah, we're starting to say, all right, was that the king of Babylon at the days of Isaiah? Was he prophesying about Nebuchadnezzar, Darius, Xerxes, Artaxerxes, Darius II, Nebuchadnezzar II? Like, which one? Right? And the further description in Isaiah 14 talks about this king of Babylon from verse 3 to verse 25. And I think it's in verse 13 or 14 about this specific king of Babylon desired to set his throne in the clouds amongst the stars and be like the Most High.
The one that people think is talking about Lucifer and
because of the New King James and the King James.
Facts.
Yep.
Yeah. But it's not talking about Lucifer. It's not talking about an angel. It's talking about the king of Babylon, right? Who the original king of Babylon was this Nimrod character.
Do you think Nimrod was a title?
All the
successive title?
Yeah, I think it got picked up as a title. Yeah, that was the culture and the tradition of all the ancient Middle Eastern countries. Just like you would have, like I said, Darius 1, Darius 2, Artaxerxes 1, Artaxerxes 1, Xerxes 2, Xerxes 3,
right? All
that kind of stuff. So, but this is why I always go back to this verse to try to remind folks that there is this consistent king of Babylon that's always mentioned in Scripture who, like he just read a verse from Baruch 67. We also see in Revelation 9, we also see this is the beast that comes out of the bottomless pit. That's what Isaiah 14 says. This king goes down to Sheol.
That's right. And it
comes out of the
pit. What's up, Bubba?
He's coming back up.
When we had our discussion last time, I had brought up Nimrod and I brought up Apollyon, that verse in Revelation.
Revelation 9.
Right. Can you talk about your the way that you interpreted it in that discussion about how you were saying like it doesn't make sense that he would be remember it comes out with the locust.
Do you remember what you were saying about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you can you bring that up?
Well, yeah, for me, Abaddon and Apollyon in Revelation 9, because I don't see any other place where there's a character specifically called Abaddon or Apollyon, at least not in any of the texts that I've recognized. But by all means, bear forth your truth to my error. I do know that those words are kind of used colloquially. Like I know that the word is used in Job, but just talking about Sheol and destruction. However, we have this figure in Revelation 9 that's called by name, destruction or destroyer, right?
Yeah.
All
And
throughout,
Apollyon.
right? All throughout Revelation 9. And I'm sure if you saw our dialogue, it's not like some super deep breakdown. When I'm looking at Revelation 9, all I see is that there's an angel who let's pull it up just to make sure that I'm not quoting it wrong, because God knows I'll do that.
Oh yeah, you want Revelation 9?
Yeah, can you pull it up on the screen, Bubba?
11.
Because I'm too scared to pull my Bible up on my computer because I messed around and froze my computer.
It's all right.
Okay.
Revelation 9, 11.
Well, starting in verse 1 though. Starting in verse 1, because for me,
fifth angel sounded.
It's all the dialogue about the locusts, right?
Sure.
Okay.
So the fifth angel sounded. This is the trumpet. I saw a star from heaven fall into the earth, and to him he was given a key to the bottomless pit. He opened the bottomless pit. Smoke arose out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And then the locusts come out of the smoke. Now I know there was a gentleman on one of your last broadcasts, and you guys were kind of tapping into the locusts, and you said that do you think that the locusts aren't actually coming from the smoke? You think they're actually coming out of the abyss? I guess that's kind of it's the
same.
Point. Yeah, it's
the same. It's like, imagine like in any movie you've seen, and there's a lot of predictive programming for this too, where smoke comes out of a volcano or what, smoke comes out of a big explosion, and out of that explosion comes things up into the air and then down, like artillery, right? It's shot up and then it through trajectory goes down. So that's why you see out of the smoke come these things, but it tells you where these things come from. Locusts, they came from the bottomless pit.
Okay.
The smoke, the scorpion-like things, and Apollyon, they all come from the bottomless pit. So that's where it's repeated in Revelation 11 and Revelation 17 that this beast who came out of the bottomless pit is doing these things.
We'll just sticking with Revelation 9. Like when I'm reading Revelation 9, verse 4, it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which do not have the seal of God on their forehead. So verse 4 for me is like, okay, well, cool. Like, okay, well, whatever these things, whatever facts, right? Whatever these things are, they're not coming to mess with God's people, right? So then verse 5, it talks more about what the locusts are doing. They torment people for 5 months. Okay. Torment is like a scorpion which striketh a man. So verses 7 through 9, 10, it's talking about their appearance.
Yep.
And then verse 10, okay, that's still scorpions. Okay, so it reiterates 5 months. So we have a time period. Verse 11, and they had king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name is Hebrew in Abaddon, but in Greek, in the Greek tongue, his name is Apollyon. Go to the next verse.
Okay. Do you know who Apollyon was in ancient Greece?
Well, see, and that's the thing. Like, so my mode of exegesis when I'm looking at this text stops there. If I get anything outside of the proximity of what this text said, I'll consider it, but it's not going to be like bread and butter for me.
Well, you know that Diana is mentioned in the New Testament. Zeus is mentioned in the New Testament. These are Greek gods.
But I wouldn't go to the Greek sources and hear everything that they have. I mean, because I'm sure that some of their gods are viewed as heroes. Whereas
no, I'm not talking about I'm talking about the Hebrew source. The New Testament writers. I mean, even in Revelation.
I would agree.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is like they knew what the Greeks believed. And I think that's why they're translating it for you.
Okay. Well, I respect that, but for me, like that's I don't know that much. I couldn't say that much about Apollyon, and it seems like the figure in Revelation 9, he's doing the bidding of the Most High. He's the king over these locust things that are tormenting people who are not the saints. And if Nimrod is a one-to-one correspondence with the Antichrist, which is a one-to-one correspondence with the man of lawlessness, and a one-to-one correspondence with the king of Babylon, that's like one of his primary functionalities, right? And so for me, I don't put that situation
Wait, I'm sorry. Could you say that again? What's one of his primary functionalities?
To torment the God's saints.
Well, we see the only person that's called a beast in Revelation consistently is this guy that is given authority by the dragon, Satan.
Facts.
And then under that authority, the first beast and the second beast, who rules in the same authority, they go out and they make war against the saints.
The saints. That Apollyon figure wasn't doing that in Revelation 9. No.
Just for those 5 months.
Just for those 5 months. That's right.
But I understand it, but there's no other language about this Apollyon or Abaddon figure.
There is, and Revelation
that's why
17 says that the king, the beast that you saw come out of the pit is a king. And it calls him a king in Revelation 9:11 and says he comes out of the pit.
I think that, well, let's go back to Revelation 9.
Okay.
Because the text said that he's the king of the bottomless pit. Let's go back to where it says his name. Okay, the angel of the bottomless pit. Does that mean that he came out of it?
Yes. Revelation 9:1.
Let's go back up to verse 1.
The angel.
Okay.
Fifth angel sounds.
Okay, so I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and he was given the key to the bottomless pit. The only thing I see coming out of the pit in this stanza here are the locusts.
And they had a king over them.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the king came out. I can understand the exegete, but the locust clearly came out of.
Well, let me ask you this: what do you think it's referencing here in Revelation 11 when it talks about this guy right here, verse 7? And when they shall finish their testimony, to the two witnesses, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, shall overcome them and kill them.
He would say it's tough to correlate the Apollyon Abaddon character with that beast.
This is why I asked Marla to bring this up, because in our conversation, I was trying to defend this idea of Apollyon, and I'm not anywhere near equipped for that. So I really wanted to hear this conversation between you two.
I think too, we need to go back to the Greek and see how this word bottomless pit is being translated, see how the word abyss is being translated, because we do know that the sea beast is also coming out of the water, right? It doesn't say that it's coming out of the bottomless pit or that there's smoke or anything like that.
We don't know where. Yeah, we don't know where this is being opened.
But okay, true. But if the sea beast is coming out of the ground from somewhere, how do we know that this is a very specific place where a key is opened up, or a key has opened up the top of it, and this figure that comes out is Apollyon?
This is a great question, because it goes into, what does the scriptures tell us has control over containers underneath the ground, underneath us?
Angels.
I agree.
Yeah, this is what Enoch tells us. That there's specific angels. Well, who is it? Is it Raphael? Or is it Uriel?
Well, I think Uriel
has Tartarus. Raphael has
Sheol. Yeah. So they're actual. And then, of course, there's another text that actually directly tells us which angel this is that comes down. It's the Apocalypse of Abraham. Some people don't want to accept it. Some people do. But it directly says he's the one that is the restrainer that holds these.
Can I read that real quick?
Sure. Go ahead, brother.
I got it right here where he says... Thought I had it quick. Almost.
These are all great questions, guys. And Jason, at any point, if you're bored or if you don't, if you have a question, chime in. You're welcome to. I know that you said that you haven't studied Revelation as much as we may have, so I don't want you to feel bored.
I've read it. I'm definitely not lost or anything like that. Like, I understand everything you're saying. Just not sure what I can interject at the moment.
That's all right. It's Apocalypse of Abraham, chapter 10. Verses 8 through 14. I'm called Joel, or Yahweh, depending on the translation, by him who moves those who exist with me on the seventh expanse, firmament, on the firmament, a power in virtue of the ineffable name, it says, that is dwelling in me. I am the one who has been given to restrain. We see that mention of a restrainer in Thessalonians, according to his commandment, the threatening attacks of the living ones of the cherubim against one another, and to teach those who carry him the sign of the seventh hour of the night of man. I'm ordered to restrain the Leviathan for every single attack and menace of every single reptile are subject to me. I am who has been commissioned to loosen Hades and destroy him who stares at the dead.
So how do you know he's not Abaddon or Apollyon?
Who?
The angel?
The angel?
Yeah, Joel. If he's the king of the bottomless pit, and he's got the power over locusts, and he sends them to torment. Go ahead, Bubba. I'm sorry.
That is where I tried to show, the history of who this Apollyon character. Apollon's just the Latin transliteration of the Greek word Apollo.
One quick interjection is, so Marlo, you're saying that the angel that came down is the king, right?
No,
that's what Marlo is suggesting. Okay. That the way he reads it is, the king over the locust is the one that came down and was given the key. Are you saying that angel is the one that's king? No?
I haven't made any connection with the Apollyon figure. I haven't gone past whatever it says about him in that one text.
Okay, let me just say this. I heard one time on Facebook, some random dude was saying that he was arguing against like a literal Nimrod. And he was saying that this character in Revelation is actually the same angel that came down on Egypt and killed all the firstborns. And I think he said in the Old Testament, it says Apollyon.
Well, I would
like destruction.
I've never
destruction.
I've never heard it. I mean, but I can understand. Like I said, I could understand that perspective.
But
I don't think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But yeah, but this is obviously not my view. I'm just saying. But if this angel came down, because you said he was doing the bidding of the Most High, right?
Yes.
And the same with the angel in Egypt was doing the bidding of the Most High, right? By killing all the firstborns. And passing over the houses with the blood on it.
But I'm careful about connecting dots. This is how people end up making Christ the angel of the Lord and stuff like that. For me, if a text says something isolated, if I don't have a figure in the New Testament tell me that this person is this person and he did this over here in these ancient times,
right.
I don't make that connection no matter how much.
I'm confused on what your stance is there, or what you're suggesting then.
So this is what I would say. Without connecting anything else to Revelation 9, all I see is that there's an angel with a trumpet. One of them's given a key, and that there's locust that comes out of the abyss once it's opened, and that those locusts have over them an angel of the bottomless pit, which I don't believe necessitates you to think that it came out of the bottomless pit. They could just have somebody that has authority over them, and it could be one of the angels. I mean, the angels are doing all types of destruction and plagues all through Revelation. Yeah, and so go ahead.
Think about just when you say. Like if I say I'm west of Texas, that's going to mean that I'm from Texas. And that's the same way that that linguistic, like when you say in Spanish, like yo soy de west de Texas, I'm from Texas. So it's the same word of and from my understanding.
Let me check that because you might be right. Yeah, see, and that's
all I'm trying to ask throughout all this is just, I know that you're hesitant to try to connect anything to Revelation 9, but are you holding that same hermeneutic principle with everything else mentioned in Revelation in every other chapter?
Yeah, I'm trying to at least. I do the best.
So like Revelation 19, Yeshua that destroys the beast and the false prophet, is that the same Yeshua in Revelation 5 in the temple opening the scrolls?
Well, yeah, I would say that. Yeah,
you're connecting 5 and 19.
Well, let me be more specific. Okay. When we're talking about certain events taking place in Revelation, how we'll say that. Am I delayed?
No, I hear you.
Okay, Bubba.
You're good.
So, connecting figures where in Revelation, when we say things like, okay, well, the first scroll is also the first trumpet, and it's also the first bowl that's being poured out on people. There's certain things that I need to see to know for a fact, or to at least believe beyond a reasonable doubt that that's a solid exegete.
But Sean, didn't you say that it's not the bowls are not synonymous. The bowl, you
Well,
said
no,
the
no, he
bowls are
didn't
on
say
the
that. He said
last
that the
trumpet, right?
he said that the bowls are on the last trumpet and
Okay.
stuff like that. But even with the trumpets and the seals, right? Like to say that they're not chronologically placed after one another, right?
Mhm.
When I'm just looking at the text, I recognize that the Bible wasn't written in chapters and verses, right?
Mhm.
But I do think that there's certain there is language that stands out that does help us to place things in the proper chronological order. With regards to Revelation 9, right? The the key terms for me are Abaddon, Apollyon, angel, right? Now, for me, like I would have to see something where for a fact, like Abaddon or Apollyon is used somewhere else in some scripture to know for a fact. I can understand all the language about the bottomless pit. I don't deny that. But when I see that these locusts are tormenting people that don't have the seal of God on their head for 5 months, that to me is a big deal. It's not something that I can just set aside and be like, well, he came out of the bottomless pit, so it has to be the same person.
Okay.
Because I'm not even sure if he did. But I want to look up real quick.
Well, can I before we go too far away from Revelation 9, let me just say something
No.
real quick.
I was looking up. West Blaze said that the word of
Okay.
is the same. So it's interesting because let's see. One just used ha, which is the, but it could be a prepositional phrase. But there's another one that says ek, which could be by or out of. But that's just talking about the smoke. I want to go to the verse where it's talking about the king. Okay, so let's see, because it might be the same word. Let's see. And they came, king as king angel. Ha. So it doesn't have.
And so that word king, that word angel in verse 10 is also agolos. Agolos, which doesn't always
Could
mean
be
an
messenger.
angel
I know.
from God, right? It's actually used of men in John chapter 3.
Yeah, that word of is actually not, and by all means, bear forth your truth to my error. I'm looking at Revelation 9 and 11, and I'm looking at both the morphological Greek and the Textus Receptus, where it says.
So let me ask you this, though, real quick.
Double check. Go ahead, Bubba.
So the readers in the 1st century AD or 2nd century, depends on when you want to argue when Revelation was written. We're talking about people that they lived in, the readers of this, right? We get in the first 3 chapters, the churches of Asia Minor, which is modern day Turkey, right, connected close to Greece and Macedonia, North Mediterranean. And these were 7 different churches to whom they have created converts, disciples in Yeshua over the last several decades or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
These people all are even though they're in the Roman Empire, Greek is still the dominant language of trade during this day.
Okay, I agree.
Okay, so that's why you have a mixture in the Gospels of Greek words being translated for you, Hebrew words being translated for you, and Latin words being translated for you. And now in this particular Revelation, you have only Greek being translated for you by the actual vision, by John himself penning the letter. So to his audience, this is a point of finding context when we stumble over difficult words. Like why would he give a Greek name to this character, to a Greek speaking and receiving audience, if he thought they wouldn't understand or be misled by who this famous Greek name was?
Well, is Abaddon as famous as Apollyon?
Abaddon is just the Hebrew version.
But I'm saying
the translation of Apollyon.
But the point is that he gave the name of both, right? And at this,
it's the same name. It's just in each language it's said differently.
I agree. But the argument is that it's a particular figure, right?
Yes.
So the same argument that we're making for the Greek tongue, we have to also be able to make for the Hebrew tongue. Now, are there any ancient Hebrew connections to Nimrod where he's called Abaddon, or is there anything that correlates this Apollyon figure in Greek literature or Greek? I don't know what to call it.
If that's what the Hebrew tongue spoke and transliterated Apollyon or Apollo to Abaddon, then that's just a language translation issue. Which is why the text translates it for us, so we're not confused.
But
That's,
but
I
it
mean,
is also just like you could use that, like if you were speaking Hebrew, you could say like Abaddon, as in like, oh, here comes somebody who's coming to destroy. You could just call somebody like a description, right? So it could not be a specific name. It could just be the descriptive term
I
being
hear that.
applied as a name, right?
I hear that, but that's why I keep going back to how many people come out of the bottomless pit that are mentioned again in the book of Revelation.
I don't think that the text necessitates that we view that he came out of like. So the argument first was made that which is a good argument, which is a good perspective of and
Okay.
from, but that's not actually in the Greek. Now I can understand why the translators would put that in there, but I mean, if the word of isn't there, which is you might say by or like ek, I could have, which is the angel over the bottomless pit. I mean, if there's no word there, who decided that the word should be of?
Well, it actually says that they had an angel over them, a king over them.
I know, but then it says which is the angel of the bottomless pit. So that was the point. That was the part that was highlighted to say, well, he has to be coming out of the pit because he's of the bottomless pit, which makes perfect sense. But it's only the word ha there, which is the. It doesn't have of. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah.
I think we're trying to isolate too much, maybe to hyper focus in on just trying to let these passages interpret themselves when we have a wealth of context, right? Isaiah 14, as we mentioned earlier, talked about the king of Babylon going down to the pit. We see the same reference as the Assyrian in Ezekiel being taken down to Sheol, Assyria.
Yeah.
And then
Isaiah
Revelation 7.
And the Septuagint talks about the Assyrian who will be destroyed not by the sword of a man.
That's right. And then Revelation 17.
Up until Sean showed 17, I didn't even know there was another part in Revelation that spoke of anything coming out of the pit. But it does say that a beast came up out of the pit. And so that is pretty good evidence to me that this is the same character, right? Because there's not two pits, right? There's not two bottomless pits. There's not two figures that come out, right?
Correct.
In 17, it does say that the beast that came up out of the bottomless pit. So how would you interpret that, Marlo?
Well, I would interpret it the way that it's read there. That's very, very specific.
The beast you saw.
It ascends out of the bottomless pit, and it's called a beast.
Well, where did John see a different beast come out of the bottomless pit than Revelation 9 in his vision?
I'm not using the word beast to connect Revelation 9 or Revelation 17 or anything like that. There's a beast that comes out of the earth and there's a beast that comes out of the sea. This verse, go ahead. I'm sorry.
He's saying it doesn't use the word beast in Revelation 9, and that's true.
And then the you've got the prepositional phrase here in verse 8, ascends out of the bottomless pit. Now, if that was in Revelation 9, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd be like, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's go with your other theory that you mentioned, where you're saying, what if the angel over these scorpion-like things that come out of the bottomless pit? What if it was an actual angel of God that's in command, allowing these things to torment the wicked, right, the unrighteous,
for 5 months?
Yeah, for 5 months. And by the way, I was going to try to highlight that passage. They don't actually the torment of the sting lasts 5 months.
Either way.
Well,
they're
it's not like they're literally being held down and being tormented. Like they get stung, and then that's torment of that sting lasts for 5 months, and it describes that pain as being as if stung by a scorpion. And I actually tried to cover this in part 6. Right before I covered in part 7 the king of Babylon, I covered in part 6 scorpion chimeras, because that was a huge thing in ancient Babylon of these chimeric scorpion things that were all surrounding the kings of ancient Babylon. It's a very interesting concept.
And Nimrod was called the scorpion king.
And Nimrod was, yes. So what I'm saying here, though, is yeah, right. What I'm saying here is what is this beast that he saw that comes out of the bottomless pit that the kings give their power to?
Mm-hmm.
So if we go with the alternate theory that you proposed earlier, which is possibly it's a good angel of God that's in control over this judgment on the unrighteous being perpetuated by these scorpion things, why would the kings of the earth give their authority to a good angel?
I'm not, but you're still connecting Revelation 9 with
Right.
Revelation 17. I'm not doing
Because
that.
there is
You see what
no
I'm
other
saying?
part of the vision where something comes out of the bottomless pit except
But it doesn't
this thing continually
specifically
being referenced.
it doesn't specifically say that the angel came out. It says that I'll concede that the locust came out. The word
Yeah.
of is there.
But in that context, why would we set like, okay, so it's describing the all right, so we'll go back to Revelation 9 because I see your point for sure, and I am trying to address it.
No,
So
it's all good, brother.
it describes the things, the locust-like things, which actually I love this kind of vision because you actually see that they're described as locusts when they're coming out of the smoke, because it seems like and this is my interpretation, but it seems like a perspective issue where he's seeing them as a swarm coming up out of the smoke in the air. But as they get closer, that's where we get verses 7 through 10, where it starts describing them in greater detail because they're getting closer to him in the vision. He can actually see details now. So now he sees like, oh, okay, they got crowns, they got faces like men, hair like women, teeth like lions, they got breastplates of iron. He can, and he can hear the sound of their wings. You know what I'm saying? So now he can actually, he's getting more descriptive details as they get closer in the vision. And then it's all connected in the same context, the king over them that he's also seeing. So then it then goes on to say about, this army that's killing 200 million people.
What do you think these are, Sean? The locusts.
Chimera scorpions. I think it's exactly what they're described because they were in ancient Babylon. They're chimeras, just like chimeras. This is what transhumanism movement.
So this is like a hybrid, like angel creature.
This is a hybrid
that was
warrior.
locked up.
This is a hybrid warrior, and these are being genetically modified, in my opinion. They're being
like Nephilim. Okay. So never mind. I understand what you're saying now.
These are
right. I got you.
I personally think that what we're seeing here, and this is, I want to be very transparent when I talk about these things. To whereas, does the text directly tell us, or am I infusing a little bit of interpretation so people can understand where I'm coming up with these ideas, right? So I take ancient history and what they talked about, the king of Babylon, who it was, who they worshipped throughout all of history and still worship today in every Masonic temple and every false religion across the world, which is this Nimrod character who used to be called Apollyon and Nerta, Osiris, all these different names, Shiva. And then I take what did he surround himself with? He's with minotaurs and centaurs and chimera scorpion things and all these. He was considered like. He was also considered like the lord of the horseman, which is what they call minotaurs, I think.
Yeah.
And so this is his continual history that's always talked about him and this ancient king. And I look at all this description of history, and then I see in the same worldview that these scriptures are being written. These Hebrews are living in the midst of Greek believing people. Greek mythos believing people.
John's on the island of Patmos.
Yeah. So he's definitely, and all the supposedly the myths of the gods of ancient Greece came from the Mediterranean Sea and the island of Crete. And this is the world they're living in. And he's writing scripture and he's talking, he names one of these gods that they're all worshiping, that he's the one who is not now, but it's going to come back again. And in the Egyptian writings, only Osiris is the one that's destined to be resurrected. He is the great phoenix. Jason, am I off on that?
I think you might be onto something there.
This is the only one in ancient history and secular religious beliefs of the only god of the family of pantheon of gods that was supposed to actually be resurrected. And then of course we see Revelation talking about this particular character and all these different references. And I think personally these chimera scorpions are like an army that's being. All right, so the transhumanism movement escalates to the point where they actually have a host body for unclean spirits to inhabit and fulfill this purpose here.
Now you're nailing it.
To be fair, though, we would have to assume, first of all, that these creatures were indeed actually real. There's a whole other line of thinking on this that they weren't. That the whole reason why Nimrod was even considered the Lord of the Horse was because, and not just the Lord of the Horse, many of his names and attributes were because he was a mighty hunter, right? The reason why he was able to establish his dominion in the first place, and this is according to like historical, historians, they say was because of the reason why he was able to establish dominion over people was because he saved them. He was their savior from the wild, because the wild was dangerous to weak men and women and children. They, they didn't have, they needed protection from the wild, from the beasts of the field and all of the predators out there. And he tamed the horse, and he was able to create armies to defend, and then there's Diana, the tower, right? He erected these towers, and so the mythos interpretation is that these were not actual beings. These were just, as the years went by, the way people told the stories to their people, and it became like religion, right? But not that these creatures actually did exist. It's just the idea was descriptive of real events that took place, right? And I'm not saying that's correct, and I'm not saying that chimeras were real. I personally can't prove either one, but I just wanted to say that there is two ways to look at that. I mean, I believe in giants. I have an encyclopedia on giants in North America.
Those are chimeras.
I would say they're Nephilim, right?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how you use the word Nephilim, but
half angel, half human, right?
I would
say that. Now chimeras are not. They're a genetically modified being, right? It's literally entangling the DNA and creating embryos, right? That's what a chimera would be, not an angel hybrid. It would be an actual scientific experiment.
Yeah, chimera is a cross mixing of the species.
So I do believe, like with evidence, that giants are real. I've seen evidence, newspaper clippings, everything, bones, all that. Now, were chimeras real, and centaurs and all of these things? I have not seen the evidence for them. I'm not saying they weren't real, or I'm just saying there's another interpretation that these creatures were just.
Let me ask you.
They're myths. They're myths.
Okay.
A way to describe events. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm not a teacher.
No, it's okay. Let's just roll with it for a minute. So what then, if that would be the correct interpretation, what is Revelation 9 describing then to you into that interpretation?
The scorpion coming out? Yeah, bro. Yeah. I have no idea.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking you. I really don't know.
In the same way, I would ask that to Marlo. So if your interpretation of Revelation 9:11 is that it's not who it says, it's not this Apollonian character of old of history, but that it's just a name for something else, well then where does that interpretation go? What's the end of that interpretation? Play the tape through.
The end of the interpretation is that for 5 months, wherever that's at on the chronological marker in the eschatological timeline, an angel is given the authority to torment or send scorpions on people, in the same sense that angels are given the authorities to pour bowls out that destroy thirds of the earth and all other types of things. It's not outside. It's not so far out of the context of the narrative of what the angels are doing in end times for me to think that that's possibly what's happening. Especially when we consider like Egypt, right? So Mike brought up basically the Passover, but prior to that, right? We know that all those plagues were basically a shot at the gods of Egypt.
Okay.
So it's not. I would say that on a loose way, it's not outside of the Most High's MO to take a shot at the surrounding nations' Elohim by the way that he plagues them. But he doesn't necessarily use their Elohim to plague them. He plagues them himself, and he sends his angels to do it.
Well, okay, but let's look at the text again, though, because let me roll with that. Suggested interpretation.
Because
Jubilee says that Passover, it was unclean spirits, by the way.
Oh, word.
Did the bid.
Well, I stand corrected.
Yeah. Real quick. So if
guys, excuse me 1 second. I'm gonna have to bow out.
Okay, Jason, you've been awesome. Thanks, man.
Appreciate you joining us.
Appreciate the invite, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
It's good to meet you.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, you two guys. Take care.
Talk to you soon. So in this particular passage where it's describing these locusts, if you're saying, is this possibly just a way that the Father is issuing judgment on those who don't have the seal on their head, the unrighteous in this moment, regardless of where you place this in the timeline leading up to Yeshua's return. They're only getting tormented for 5 months, and you're saying that he just sent scorpions to sting them, and they're in pain from that scorpion. If that's the case, why are they described with breastplates of iron? What does that mean in your interpretation?
It means that they have breastplates of iron on.
So little scorpions have breastplates of iron, like little.
That's not. I don't think that anything is outside the realm of possibilities for the Most High. If that's what it says, it could.
So like,
be
if I
that,
try
or
to stomp this scorpion with my shoe, it's going to go clink like metal.
I don't know how big they're going to be. I don't know.
Okay.
All I can tell you is what the text says. Right
Okay.
now, interpreting it from there is why we have so many different books on Revelation and so many different perspectives and exegetes on: is it America? Is it this nation? Does this mean this? Somebody might be right about.
Well,
You
that's
might
all
be
I'm
right.
asking. I'm not saying you gotta prove
No,
your
I know.
suggested interpretation.
brother.
I'm just saying, so let's play the shape through on that interpretation and ask, why are we getting all these details in this same passage? Like, if I saw a scorpion with a face like a man and hair like a woman, I don't care how big it is. What? That's crazy, right? So is it small?
Right.
Is it big? I mean, for the course of the narrative, it would make a lot more sense from what from the people who have received this vision and this particular, the people that this is being written to, that it's going to be, they would understand the reference, I guess I should say, because
no, I understand. I understand how you're presenting it. But I think that that's one methodology in interpreting it, right? Like I
Yeah.
think that when we start talking about the Bible writer's audience, we automatically go into a realm of talking about way more than we could possibly know, as far as what they might have believed and what I mean. Sure, I'll agree that there was information maybe about a Apollyon figure or about a Zeus figure or whatnot, but what the Hebrews thought of these figures, right, versus what the Greeks thought, is also something that we would have to have dialogue on. And I still feel like the fact that the name Abaddon is given is just as relevant as the name Apollyon being given. If there's
Okay.
ancient information on this Apollyon figure, right? Do we have anything in the Talmud? Do we have anything in, even if it's a book in the Qumran caves or a scroll anywhere, where Abaddon is spoken of as this figure that's supposed to come back, and he fits within this narrative of this sea beast figure that comes out and is everything that we know that the so-called Antichrist or the man of perdition is supposed to be in end times. For me, all I see is that he's active for 5 months. And I think that because the term bottomless pit is used, I see why there's such emphasis on, well, it must be the same. This must be the figure, the beast that comes out of the pit, because look, it says angel of the. It's like, well, I mean, maybe I'm not. It could be. I don't have a problem with that at all. But I think that the language about the sea beast is a lot more specific. And I still want to know, well, what are the 7 heads and what are the 10 horns, right? What are the 7
doesn't
heads
it tell us in Revelation 17?
Well, I'm saying I want to know, like, who really are these people? Like, if the beast is if the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, where the one head is fatally wounded and then it gets healed, if that
Okay.
whole figure is Nimrod, right? And let's just say that the heads and the horns are maybe different, I don't know, entities that he controls. I want to know who those are, or maybe how you exegete that. Like, how would you exegete the 7 heads and 10 horns? Because that's something I don't have. I get lost with that. I know that the dragon has the same heads.
Revelation 17.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would exegete that this beast is the Revelation 9 and Revelation 11 beast.
Okay.
That they are one and the same. This is the third mention of it, in my understanding. And it gets amplified, if you will, that it's specifically a beast who was, is not, and even is of the 8th, and is of the 7 and goes into perdition, which is destruction.
Okay.
And so that's why it says up here further, he is the beast that was, is not, and yet is. I know some translations say he yet will be. I think this is the KJV.
Yeah, that's the KJV.
So ultimately, that's why you're given a, this is kind of, a lot of people love to contrast this with Revelation 1 about speaking about, the Yeshua who was and is and
right
and it will come. So there's a difference here. But this is a beast who was and is not. So he's not is now.
Right.
He is not.
Gotcha.
Right. So there's just that little extra explanation on who's being referenced here. We get a description. He's from the bottomless pit, that he was, whatever,
What does perdition mean?
Destruction.
Okay.
And then the 10 horns, I think it tells us that these are 10 kings who give their power to the beast for an hour.
Do you
And
have
then,
any exegete on who you think that they're going to be in the future, or do you think that that's something that's completely okay?
They're referenced in Isaiah 1 Enoch 62 and 63, Revelation 6, 11 through 14.
Kings
right
of the
here.
earth.
Yeah, they're just references the kings of the earth. I don't specifically know their names or if we ever will.
One of them will probably be a Rothschild.
There's the connection that you were looking for, Marlo. Is in 17 it says it about the beast that came up out of the pit and go into perdition. That word perdition right there is Apollyon and Abaddon.
Destruction.
Oh, that's deep. That's deep.
Perdition, destruction, Abaddon.
So, go ahead.
So that's all I'm saying. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains on which the woman sits. So this is, to my understanding, this is, all the kings of the earth bow down and kiss the ring of the Pope. So this is the Vatican is built on 7 hills geographically. Okay. And I would see that, just like it's explained earlier about this woman and her allegiance to Mother Babylon, is that she's the one that sits on the beast and sits over many nations and peoples and tongues, just as the Catholic Church does, and just as all the kings of the earth give their allegiance to the papacy in some regard. Even U.S. presidents go and kiss the ring of the Pope and hold his hand, all that stuff. So that's my interpretation, is that the 7 heads are the 7 mountains on which the woman sits. So that's going to be,
and this is the daughter,
the location of this woman, and then the 10 horns are the kings of the earth, who work in conjunction with this woman, because that's the priesthood of Babylon. So of course the administering governors, the administering lower kings. This is why in ancient times they had that term king of kings, right? Like an emperor would be a king of kings, because he's over other kings. So this is why in this regard, the 10 kings are over, they have authority of some regard, but they also work in conjunction with the woman, which we see that happening on the earth today. The papacy works in conjunction with the leaders of the earth and manipulate events and cultures and elections, all kinds of things, right? And when that time comes, the beast appears for 42 months. He's going to destroy the woman. Her purpose is done. He doesn't want even a false version of Yeshua being preached anymore. He's about to persecute everybody believing in Yeshua for 42 months and reestablish Babylonian worship. And then these 10 kings, they're no longer working in conjunction with her, but they're now giving their authority to the beast when the time comes.
Gotcha. So,
and it isn't interesting, by the way, that they just renamed the G7 to the D10. I think that's crazy.
Sucky, bro.
Did you guys see that?
No, I didn't see that. I wish I wouldn't have known that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The summit that they be having?
The news article.
Oh, okay. And they named it to what? G7 to.
Yeah, I pulled it up for you real quick.
They skipped numbers, huh? Bro, it's about to go all the way down.
Yeah, the Atlantic Council from the G7 to the AD10.
What is that? I don't understand.
Yeah. The different countries involved in this special council.
So there were 7 and now there's 10?
Now they changed it to 10, yeah.
Okay, so in
just like 2 days ago.
That's crazy.
Mike, if you're still in the audience, I know you're freaking out right now.
You
probably already saw this, but he's not.
He passed out.
Okay. Who were the 3 additionals?
I don't know. Go read it.
Revelation, or not Revelation, but Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the feet, iron and clay, 10 toes. How do you guys exegete that in conjunction with everything that we're talking about in Revelation? We know that it says that they will not cling to one another, right? But I want to know how that fits into your perspective on what's going on in Revelation with regards to these 10 kings and this final kingdom.
Go ahead, Sean.
Is this, you talking about this verse right here?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me see here. And we get the interpretation a little further down, right? The fourth kingdom, which you saw, is strong as iron, for as much as iron breaks in pieces, subdues all things. As iron that breaks all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas you saw the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it a strength of the iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with the miry clay. As the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so this kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And where you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So, me personally, this is my understanding, like the 10 kings we just saw from Revelation 17.
Mm-hmm.
The chimeric king who comes out full on Nephilim
Mm-hmm.
tries to take over, but he can't. He doesn't accomplish all. He doesn't fully take over all the
There's
world.
never
in his
full
42 months.
unity.
That's why it's partly strong and partly weak, right? Partly broken, because he can't. In my understanding, he doesn't accomplish world domination before Yeshua returns.
So there's opposition even
Oh,
up
yeah.
until the end.
Yeah. Well, that's why if we look at the succession of events, and I'm going to bring this back up on screen. Let me just put this up for the viewer's sake real quick. If we look at the succession of events that's describing the beast during the end times, from my understanding of what I've tried to show who the beast is that he comes out for 42 months. That's what's the authority that's given to him to make war against the saints. And it says he overcomes them.
Mhm.
So that means he's making war against somebody. Otherwise, they would be going along with him, and he would not have to war against them.
Right.
So that's why in Revelation 13, they have to enforce the mark and allegiance to worship the image of the beast. And if you don't worship, you're killed. So people people are getting killed. Revelation 6, the judgment, the fifth seal, Revelation 6, people in Sheol crying out, when are you going to avenge our blood? Angels give them their robes of resurrection, say, we just as you were killed, some other people got to get killed. It's not done. The story's not over yet. Be patient. Wait a little bit longer. And so that means there's persecution happening. There's people getting killed. To me, I would synonymously line that up with Revelation 13, first and second beast, persecuting the saints, just like Revelation 12:17. They got their authority from the dragon. The dragon goes to make war against those keep the commandments of God and testimony of Jesus. That's the persecution statement. The application of that statement comes through the first and second beast going out and making war against the saints. So there is persecution of people. That is the resistance against him. And I don't think that's all the resistance personally. I think there's other resistance against him from other nations who don't fall for it, because that's why he is described in the four horses seen in Revelation 6 as one who goes out to make war against the nations. And death and Hades. This is why I've tried to line up the seal judgments in the same 42-month time period as a trumpet judgment.
So you think he's the rider on the white horse that goes out?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's the one given a crown.
So do you have on your chronological timeline, do you have any section for the birth pangs of distress?
Yeah, it's constantly leading up to this time, and then it's going to increase during this time, just like birth pangs do, right? They get more in frequency the closer you get to birth.
Check out Second Baruch, the later chapters of that for that as well.
The dividings.
And this is what Isaiah 66 talks about in verse 7 through 9, verse going on down to verse 10, talking about the birth pangs of Zion travailing. And then she gives birth to a boy without travailing, but then she births an entire nation in a day when she does travail. So the actual birth pangs, in my understanding that Yeshua is referring to, is not, it is times of distress, and there is earthquakes and wars and rumors of wars, but it's actually a reference leading up to the resurrection of the saints.
I agree. So birth pangs of distress, great tribulation, Yeshua returns.
Yeah.
Okay. Now for any of the seals, you don't place the birth pangs of distress anywhere in those?
Well, they're just happening throughout. They're happening throughout. And increased frequency. This is what 2 Baruch 27 tries to explain.
Okay.
That there's earthquakes, there's distress, there's war, there's famine, there's conflict, there's burning of cities, and all these are intermingling with each other, leading up to the end of the 12 parts of the end time prophecy. So
do you think we're in the birth pangs of distress now?
Well, no, personally. I mean, we there's
tribulations, there's earthquakes,
there's random earthquakes, there's a lot of stuff happening. I think
because it seems
increasing, but I don't think Revelation started yet. If that's what you're actually asking.
No, I'm just asking because when I read the seals, I've always read that as the birth pangs of distress. I don't read those as anything else. But maybe you can enlighten me if you don't feel that that's the birth pangs of distress. Like, do you have anything in there that could show me like this definitely can't be the seals being the birth pangs of distress? Because that would place the seals at a different chronological timeline than the trumpets.
Okay, so you're at which are you asking if the seals themselves are speaking about birth pangs? Are you connecting the birth pangs with the seal?
Yeah, in Revelation 6.
Okay.
So Revelation 6, I'm thinking Luke 21:10, Matthew 24.
Okay.
You know, the text where he says specifically, you know, like it's going to be bad, but the end is not yet. Nation's going to rise against nation. There's going to be famine and pestilences and food shortages and whatnot, but the end is not yet. Then after that, the Great Tribulation takes place, right?
Well, see, that's what I was going to say, though. And that's where Mike talking earlier kind of comes into play about the last 2,000 years, which is we've seen famine, distress, fightings of nations, wars.
Are the 2,000 years not birth pangs?
But yeah, that you could easily call them as birth pangs, but
like increasing as throughout labor, right? Or up to labor.
If I'm to believe what we're told by geologists, that there's an increasing amount of earthquakes every year and they keep increasing, that's what they're saying. I don't have the instruments to test their data, right?
Oh, yeah,
and I'm not at their facilities watching, the needle move, but that's what they keep saying, that we're continually getting more earthquakes every year. As far as significantly, can I notice whether there's more war? I don't know. I mean, it seems like there's always been war, as long as we're just lucky in this generation, in this culture, that we haven't seen it, because we have such a strategic position.
And we have, just not in our own yard, often.
Right. Yeah.
Facts.
It's a lot of hurricanes over here in Louisiana.
Well, I mean, I grew up in Oklahoma where they have 1,000 tornadoes.
That's Tornado Alley right there.
You know what I'm saying? But yet now I live in a place where they have one tornado every 10 years. So the people that live here can move to Oklahoma and think the end times is happening. See what I'm saying? Like my wife freaks out the idea that, that cloud looks ominous. I'm like, oh, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Like I've outran tornadoes on their highway with my in my vehicle.
I was just looking up the other night about tsunamis. Did y'all know that on average, like a tsunami doesn't even reach 100 miles inland? It reaches like an average of 20 to 30.
Wow.
Because tsunamis, we get these ideas of what movies display them as like bigger than skyscrapers. They're often like 100 feet. They might peak at 200, but by the time they hit land, they're not near that tall. Yeah. So they do a lot of damage, but they don't reach inland too much.
Only to coastal cities, though, right?
Yeah, right.
So sure. I mean, we're trying to define the birth pangs. I mean, to me, that was like you just said, Yeshua talked about that. Then he said about this great tribulation. Then he said immediately after the great tribulation, you have that last trumpet, the opening of the the sky, the stars fall to the earth, the Son of Man is seen in the sky returning with his holy angels. So there is a correlation of birth pangs leads up to tribulation, and at the end of the tribulation, immediately after that is the return of Yeshua. So is that a decent answer?
No, absolutely. Okay. So for me, so when the sixth trumpet is blown, right, that's where you get the two witnesses. Now the 3.5 period that they're preaching, and they're preaching against the Antichrist figure. You would agree with that?
Well, I'm going back to the text real quick.
I'd say they'd be preaching the gospel of the kingdom well as maybe against the enemy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When is the 5 months? Is that at the beginning of the
Mike, hold on real quick.
When he comes out? I'm sorry.
No, well, the sixth trumpet is in Revelation 9, verse 13.
Sixth trumpet,
yeah. It doesn't, or at least the text in Revelation 11 doesn't signify that the blowing of the sixth trumpet is when the two witnesses come out.
Okay, let me see.
So that's why I always try to show. It tells you in Revelation 11. I got it on screen here. How the time that the two witnesses are given to prophesy. 1,203 score days. That's 1,260, which is 42 months.
Can you go down a little bit where it says the beast that comes, out of the bottomless pit will make war against them? Well, the first few times I've read this, I thought that meant that they're preaching for 42 months, and at the end of their 42 months, then the beast comes out of the pit and kills them.
Right.
You're saying no?
No.
Okay.
No, because of the them getting resurrected and taken up.
That's right. Yeah, we
And then
covered
they
that earlier.
finish their testimony.
Right.
Okay.
After 42 months, the two witnesses are done prophesying, and they're done having the power to, smite the earth with all types of plagues as they choose. So this is part of the distresses, by the way, and the tribulations. Part of the increased birth pangs is when the two witnesses arrive. So here's what I'm trying to say, guys. My understanding of this is very simple. You will not miss when Apollyon shows up.
Facts.
You will not miss when these two witnesses show up, because they'll be here at the same time. Apollyon, the destroyer, shows up, and he starts destroying, going out to conquer nations, going out to persecute the saints. At the same time, these two dudes are empowered by the Father to show up and to buffet against things happening by the destroyer.
And nobody can kill them.
Nobody can kill them for 42 months. That's crazy.
Do you think that these two will be known worldwide, or will it be localized?
These two dudes are Broly. Like they're like nobody's.
No, but I'm
nobody's
saying, but
taking
like,
these dudes.
will the system allow people to see this on the other side of the map? You know what I'm saying? Like, will they be worldwide known, or will this just be like a
I think it's gonna be hard
localized thing?
unless they have a full lockdown on all video social media worldwide. I think it's gonna be hard to hide.
Exactly. They'll be holding back the rain. Fire will be coming out of their mouths. They'll be smiting the earth with plagues. That people are going to catch this on video. It's going to make some headway.
This is why it's such an amazing, in my opinion, this is like a huge moment of encouragement during this troubling tribulation time, is that these two guys have this power to like old school prophets, to really strike fear in the hearts of the kings of the earth.
And also
and even
to encourage the people to keep pushing, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, and what are they going to be talking about? Clothed in sackcloth and prophesying for 42 months.
Repentance. And the gospel of the kingdom includes.
What happens at the end of them prophesying? Yeshua returns and the kingdom comes.
3 days after they die.
All the prophets. Imagine, guys, if you don't understand biblical cosmology, and you're looking at these guys talking about there's a city of 1,500 square miles coming down out of the sky here in the next 2 months. Get ready. Get ready. Oh, now we're at 45 days. Now we're at 60 days. And then he just turns and stops this dude from trying to kill him. And then he comes back to continues talking. Like, I don't know how this is going to look in practicality. All I know is I don't know if people are going to bring them food and water. I don't know how this is going to look. All I know is they can't be killed for 42 months, and they're prophesying consistently. And they will be prophesying the same eternal gospel that the angel shouts from the sky. It's the kingdom comes. The kingdom will come, and with the kingdom comes the king. That means all you bad guys are going to be taken out of the game, and there'll be peace on the earth. And all this sorcery, all this nonsense, all this oppression of mankind is going to stop. And this is why, from my understanding, my view of putting together Revelation, it all escalates and culminates with the beast returning. The king of Babylon. Babylon is destroyed. The king of Babylon is destroyed. All his minions are destroyed, and a new kingdom is established. Woo! The kingdom of God.
That's our hope. That is the foundation of our faith, and that we are raised to eternal life.
Yeah. So anyway, that's. I mean, we're at 3 hours and 18 minutes. I'm sure you guys are getting tired.
Very tired.
So we can ask it like a few last questions if y'all want to wrap it up, though. I won't blame you.
What I think is cool is just that time marker, the time qualifier we're given, that he only reigns for 42 months. And if we can accept that he is the one that comes out at the fifth trumpet, then there's 42 months between the fifth and the seventh trumpet.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So then the two witnesses would have come at the fifth trumpet then.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
Okay, so that I got my trumpets mixed up then. Okay, so then that's
okay. Okay. If you have a chance, I didn't want to just repeat my entire part 15 that I just did on Investigating Babylon, but that is a lot about what we were talking about tonight. And so some of those slides I showed earlier with some of the little break, I was showing you like 3 slides out of 100, right? So I systematically go through the seal, trumpet, and bowl judgments and the timeline in Revelation with part 15. So if you have a chance to check it out, it'll probably fill in some of the gaps maybe, but still it requires.
You've got a couple of clips where you just talk about the timeline. I've seen that one. I was hoping we'd be able to get into that a little bit more, but maybe next time.
Well, that actually is not that's just with like specific events after the 42 months is over, going into Yeshua returning, the millennial reign
You're
happening.
talking about new heaven, new earth.
Yeah, new heaven, new earth one. Yeah. I mean, I can pull up that graphic if you ask a question about it. If you have a question about it real quick, it's not a problem.
Oh, well, I mean, if you're closing up the show, I don't want us to end up talking about it.
No,
Well,
it's
30 more minutes. Come on.
It's not that big of a deal. It's I mean,
Okay.
because I can,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
can,
Pull. Yeah, let's
all
pull
the
a graphic.
scriptures I can expound on real quick.
Cool, Bubba. Appreciate that.
No problem. That was a morning cup of context. Let me go into my folder here.
Yeah, and I want to maybe one day really have like a deep dialogue about Ezekiel and the last chapters in Ezekiel, because 37, 38, 39, 40 and all that, and I feel like that's something that never really gets brought up in discussions about eschatology, and for me that just it causes me to proceed with a great amount of caution when I'm trying to figure out who's who and stuff like that. But let's check out this graphic.
Yeah. I mean, I can just tell you real quick, my understanding 38 and 39 is the day of the Lord's return, Yeshua. You can match up the destruction of the armies in 39 with Revelation 19. Same fire, hell, and plague that's coming down, and the same birds being called to eat and feast on the kings of the flesh and the mighty horses. It's the same destruction happening, leading up to the return of Yeshua.
So you think that Gog of Magog is a euphemism to talk about that final kingdom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's pulling people from all over.
Okay.
And that's, to me, that's my understanding of, well, specifically Gog referenced in 38, I think is another idiomatic reference to this great king. Whereas Revelation
understood.
20 talks about Gog and Magog. That, to me, from my understanding of the rest of Scripture, seems to be a geographical idiom for pulling people from all regions.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Mhm.
Where Ezekiel 38 doesn't say Gog and Magog, it just says Gog, and talks about him as a king, versus Satan deceiving people from Gog to Magog, which were geographical locations. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got this on screen here, and is this what you're asking about?
Yeah. This is this is the one I saw.
Okay.
Okay, so boom. So 1,000 years. So when you say millennial reign timeline, are you saying that he starts reigning at the first trumpet? Okay, no. Last trumpet, first resurrection, worldwide earthquake.
I apologize. I mean, I
Resurrection.
titled this because I think it was a part of the video as well, but
it's all
it goes into the millennial reign, and a lot of it I preface it with at the beginning of this little graph here with, as you can see, the 42 months, reign of Apollyon and the two witnesses are right before the graph starts, and so then the first line of the graph is the last trumpet.
Understood.
Because in Revelation 11, when they blow the seventh and last trumpet, the angels say, now you've taken your authority and begun to reign.
The kingdom of the earth has become the kingdom of the Lord's.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Okay, resurrection of the saints, taken to Zion above. Okay, so when Gog and Magog, right before Satan is let out of the abyss, or no, excuse me, after he's let out of the abyss, because he's the one that goes and deceives them.
Yeah.
Okay.
You believe that the kingdom and the saints are going to be above, like
no,
not
on the ground. The New Jerusalem is described in Revelation 21 to come down to the ground. Down, it sits on the, it sits 1,500 square miles. It is the promised land that comes down and fulfills the promised land between the Euphrates and the Nile spoken to Abraham.
And the nations are still around.
They encamp around the New Jerusalem.
The mortal survivors of the nations are living outside of the New Jerusalem. Yeah.
Zechariah 14, also in Revelation 20, 7 through 10.
And the law goes out to the nations from New Jerusalem.
Okay, hold on real quick, because y'all know I'm slow.
Oh, wait, you know what? Let me find this is the problem. Let me find the graphic where I have the actual scriptures attached to them. I'm sorry about that. I'm giving you.
It's all good.
It's going to load.
This series is how I found your channel, Morning Cup of Context. Yeah, I was learning about the Arian controversy, and then I came across your channel.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep.
So last trumpet resurrection. It's kind of distorted. Is there any way you can zoom in real quick?
Unfortunately,
Okay, let me see if I can do something on my end. Okay, I'm good. I just zoomed in. All right.
Okay.
So last trumpet, first resurrection, worldwide earthquake, resurrection, saints taken to Zion above. Last trumpet, Yeshua returns. Okay, so you wouldn't put last trumpet, Yeshua returns, and last trumpet, first resurrection just as the same block?
No, I try to differentiate. Just even though you're right, it's not the best graph. I don't profess to be great at graphs, but I just put them as a little divider line in between, just show the difference between actions, between the last trumpet and the actual angels that come to receive the harvest. Same angels in Matthew 13:30 that take the wheat to the barn, are the angels in Revelation 14 that are ready to harvest. The good angels that want to harvest. There's two different angels being referenced. One's the bad angels, or not the bad. One is the angels to harvest the bad people, the tares that are going to be bound so they can be burned, and then there's other angels that are coming to rescue or take away the newly resurrected saints to Zion above, to get away from the indignation of the Lord. And so that's why I put that bar in the middle of it. You're right. It could all be one big block, those three events. But I just try to show a differentiation so people know there's an action happening there and that Yeshua is returned. That's why I put these together, because in 1 Thessalonians 4, 13 through 17, Paul explains that the moment that the saints are being taken up by the angels to Zion, to the New Jerusalem, they meet Yeshua in the air.
In the air. Right.
So he's coming down and we see him on his way down. Air.
Yeah.
Give him a high five on the way.
Word. We greet the king as he's, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Coming in. But so I guess the part that that throws me through a cognitive dissonance is the idea that we are being, if we make it, Lord willing, taken before the bowls get dumped out and there's all this destruction on the earth.
Yeah, I didn't even put, as you can see, I didn't even put the bowls in here.
I understand, but because you've let me know, so I'm trying to think like, okay, so because in my mind, my eschatological timeline, birth pains of distress, great tribulation, and what does he say in Matthew? He said, so that all flesh is not destroyed,
the days be shortened,
right? Okay, so the trumpet is blown. I would say that's the seventh trumpet. We're gathered from the four corners of the earth to meet him in the air, and then we come down to rule. But that's after all the balls and all that type of stuff have already taken place. So in my mind, we weren't shielded from that. We were there. Go ahead.
Well, that is what Isaiah 26, 19 through 21 says. That's why I put it above this block here, is that it actually says that. Well, I'll read it real quick.
Take them into their rooms.
Yeah, let me
hide.
Okay, so we meet him as he's coming down, and then the bowls are poured out.
Yeah, so as we're being
this is
taken away, the bowls are being poured out as he's coming down. Yeah, but we're not going to obviously be hit by the bowls. You know what I mean? Like we're being, the whole point of us being taken is to be protected. And this is where people get that, take that harpazo word out of context and start to preach the rapture idea.
And the days are shortened so that the nations will have a chance to survive.
Yeah, that's why it says no flesh would survive. We're not going to be flesh anymore. We're not going to, at least we're going to be glorified.
I see what you're saying.
See what I mean? Yeah. But we're not going to be immortal. With the resurrected saints won't be mortal. All right, so here in Isaiah 19, your dead will live, their bodies will rise, the resurrection. Awaken, seeing you who dwell in the dust, for your dew is like the dew of the morning, and the earth will bring forth her dead. Go, my people, into your rooms and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourselves a little while until the wrath has passed.
There it is. What are those
Behold,
rooms?
the Lord is coming out of his dwelling to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth will reveal her bloodshed, will no longer cover her slain. So there's a sequence of events happening here. Resurrection, taken into your room. Where's your room? It's the place he prepared for you. Many rooms.
Do you think in verse 20 he's talking to the resurrected saints, or do you think he's talking to people who? Do you think he's just saying, "Hey, go hide"?
Well, this is why I think
until the wrath, hide yourselves for a little while until the wrath has passed.
This is why I think if you understand Joel 1:2, which I put on screen as well. That's not the wrong one.
Or Psalm 27:5, for in the day of trouble he will conceal me in his tabernacle. In the secret place of his tent he will hide me. Lift me up on a rock.
But that's why I put this this right after the last trumpet, when Yeshua returns, this next block about Joel 2, 1 through 11.
Okay.
The armies of the Lord come
Land
down and they're
of-
burning everything.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that's in Matthew 13 about the angels that come down and separate the wicked from the righteous. So they're actually
The wheat and the chaff.
Did you guys? Yeah, the wheat. Well, they're not technically. The reference here, to my understanding, is that they're coming down to clear the entire land where the New Jerusalem is going to sit down. So anyone left within that land. That's why Yeshua in Matthew 24 tells you, when you see the Son of Man coming in the sky,
The abomination of desolation, and
pray that your flight does not happen on Sabbath or pregnant.
Word.
Flee to the mountain, get out of there, right?
Gotcha.
Because not only is that great earthquake going to happen on the seventh trumpet in the city, so you don't want to be in New Jerusalem as well, but you also want to get out of there as fast as you can, because the angels that are coming down are going to. There's simultaneously there's an army attacking Jerusalem that the angels come down and fight, and there's another whole group that's coming down to north of Israel, about 200 miles in the valley of Jezreel, which is the valley of Garmageddon, to do that battle there. And that's where the blood's going to pile up to the horse's bridle because of the amount of people that are slain. And then all that land is just filled with death. That these angels,
burned, right?
These Joel 2 angels came down as it describes. They don't break ranks. Swords can't kill them. People are terrified. The angels of the Lord that come in, these are nobody can best these guys. They're killing everything. That's only the people that are trying to kill them, obviously. Everyone else needs to get out of there, right? And then they burn everything. They burn the whole land. They basically imagine like if you demolished a house, you would want to treat the land before you build another house on top of it. So that's what's happening. This whole area where New Jerusalem is set down, these angels come through and they burn with fire, which is what's described in that passage in Joel 2. That's just one of the many things that's happening during this day. I can talk at another time about the block below with Leviathan and Behemoth, but that's a whole nother concept about the earthquake. And
I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah, there's a lot going on this moment. But the point about the resurrected saints have to be taken away from all this, and any mortal that's not resurrected, they need to be told to get as far away from this area as possible if they can as well. Flee to the mountains of Judah, flee out of this area, because this is where this battle is going to be taking place. You don't want to be collateral damage. So with that said, the angels then in Matthew 13, 49 through 51, they're going to then separate this is what I believe Zephaniah chapter 1 is talking about. They're going to search Jerusalem door to door with lamps, room by room. The angels of the Lord in great numbers are going to go through every single city and village where any person is and move them away from this place that they're about to, the entirety of the 1,500 square miles.
What? That's deep. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Because all it's describing is a process. All it's describing is them, the angels of God come back with Yeshua, taking care of the battle. That's circumstantial. That's just getting them out of the way so they can prepare the land for the city to sit down. All this is about the city sitting down. So then once they clear out the bad guys, those are dead. Then they clear out the innocents, right, who will later be judged once the city sets down. They have to clear this whole land so they can burn it with fire and purify it, because that's Torah. Got to purify the land and purify the golden idols and all the things that are all the machinations of the wicked and all the idolatry. So then this righteous, pure city can set down on a clean, purified spot. And then all the nations in Isaiah 2, 2 through 5, Matthew 25, 31, all the nations are brought to Yeshua to be judged for the Matthew 25 sheep and goats judgment. These are all mortals that weren't resurrected.
Right.
So as Enoch, I can't remember the passage right now. There's First Enoch talks about the saints and the elect ones will be in the kingdom when the nations are brought forth for judgment by the Yeshua, by the one on the throne. So I do believe you'll be in the resurrection, brother.
The house of God.
Well, yeah, we get that as a part of our judgment to be deemed whether we're in the resurrection or not, right? That's why we're resurrected first before all these other people are judged. Right. I cover that in the Morning Cup of Context, who's judged first. And so that's where you've got, we're already resurrected, glorified bodies, part of this Melchizedek priesthood with Yeshua under his authority inside the New Jerusalem. And then all the nations are going to come to the New Jerusalem and come inside the New Jerusalem to step before the throne and see Yeshua and see the lake of fire in the valley to his left. And then they're going to stand judgment, sheep and goats, right? That's why the sheep are told, come inherit the kingdom prepared for you before the foundation of the world. They don't get to live there at that moment. they're going to have to go outside and camp around it and live out the rest of their mortal life, take part in the second resurrection, get their glorified body so they can inherit the kingdom, which is the promise of the covenant. But they got to see the kingdom. They get to go in it. They're going to get to go in it for every feast day.
Into the court, right?
As long as they're clean, right? As long as they've done the law, the Torah. This, guys, the whole Torah is practice for how mortals will interact with the kingdom.
Facts.
When it rain.
Now, so you were separating the sheep and the goats judgment from the second. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. The sheep and the goats judgment is for the mortal survivors of the nations after the tribulation. When the kingdoms come set down, right? The Son of Man's here. He judges the leftovers, the ones that weren't in covenant, that didn't make that resurrection, but they didn't deserve the judgment of being taken out because
the flesh that survived.
Yeah. Right. Which makes sense. It's on the mercy seat, not to come down and kill everybody's seat.
And that makes sense because the graphic specifically says millennial reign timeline. That'll be after the millennium reign is over with. Then that judgment takes place.
Which one?
The second judgment.
The second judgment.
The final
great
judgment.
white throne.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So that's okay.
Yeah.
But this is where something really amazing that I've never even thought of before I heard it from Sean, though, is that so these people of the nations that are left over, and they're, what are they going to be judged on during this sheep and goat?
It's Torah.
Exactly.
He says it in Matthew 25, where, you did these things for me. And they're like, when did we do those things?
They don't know that they're following Torah. They're just good people. You know what I mean? They weren't murderers. They weren't rapists.
Well, they were doing what Paul says in Romans 2, 7 through 16. They are their hearts, their conscience, either confirming them or defending them or accusing them on the day they stand judgment for Yeshua. Right? So the Gentiles who don't have a law, they're the laws, they are proof that the law is written on their heart when they follow their conscience. Right? I'm paraphrasing what Paul says in those 8 verses, but
I think
you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think too. They might also be people, because this is something I've always thought that, they might not be the most religious people in the world or anything like that, but when it hits the fan and they see how they're treating people who do actually serve the Most High, they might give people lodge or might help, because one of the things Yeshua says to them is, well, when you did it for one of the least of my brethren, you did it for me. Right. And so I've always go ahead, Bubba.
Hallelujah. And what just happened for 42 months prior to this moment? The world persecuting the saints.
Facts.
And so these unbelievers are going to see that, and they're going to be like, well, maybe they do give lodge to saints, and maybe there are some Anne Franks.
You know what I'm saying?
I think there will be.
Especially what's going on right now, because there's a lot of people who are against this thing that's being pushed onto people for different reasons than us, right? Yeah. We know our disposition is Torah first, the Most High standards first. They're not necessarily having that perspective, but they're looking around like, man, this stuff don't make no sense. They're doing too much. And I think that those type of people are going to be the ones that look at the Most High's people in those days and say, hey man, if you need anything, I got you, type deal.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good-hearted people out there that just don't understand good theology or
facts
who Yeshua is, but yet they are obeying their conscience to walk out Torah whether they realize it or not, and that seems to be the standard that he judges them off of. Which, to their surprise, they're like, "Oh, well, this is awesome!
Right?
I actually get to hang out in your kingdom." And think about all the things they witnessed leading up to that moment. Like they now know, all those sheep, those mortals that survived, they now know. Literally, as they've got some Leviathan still in their teeth, they now know that they don't live in a globe, that they live in a big room covered by a firmament. They now know that heaven is above them, the kingdom of heaven, all the angels live above them and came down. They now saw this massive continent-sized city descending. I think it's going to happen over a week's time, because that's our priestly ordination that's happening with the resurrected saints on the inside. Leviticus 8. So I think that it's all of this is they're going to see all of that stuff.
Right.
And then they're going to come on,
and some of them are still going to be deceived at the end of the millennium.
There's some people that still won't repent. Just like some of those people still didn't repent when the bowl judgments were poured out. Even when Yeshua was literally coming down through the sky, bowl judgments pouring out, fire being dropped on certain people, hailstones, and they're still not going to repent of their wickedness and sorceries.
But back to the sheep though, and it's whoever laxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do so will be called least in the kingdom of heaven.
There's a
But
hierarchy.
they're still in the kingdom, though, even though they didn't follow all the laws because they were taught not to, right? But they did obey their conscience, right? And they were trying to do what they thought was right. They may have missed out on some commandments because they were taught not to obey them, right? But they're still considered a part of the kingdom, and they're still sheep, right?
Yeah, just as many of the resurrected saints will be.
Mhm.
Great
Yeah,
point.
they're-
None of us got it all done. None of us
Amen.
have
No
got
doubt.
it all
No
figured out or
doubt.
perfect or
Facts.
nothing.
No.
Man, I was trying to find that verse I just read on Torah portions last week. I think it was on Torah portions. I do so many broadcasts I can't remember anymore. Where I read that there's all this. The West Blaze, do you remember me talking about that verse? Talking about the all the people right across the world will persecute the people of God. I think it was in the second Ezra, chapter 16. Let me pull it up real quick.
If you guys don't mind, I'm gonna go ahead and
I'm about to have to dip
go to
too.
sleep, man. I just want to thank you guys for inviting me and thinking of me. This was I hope my comments weren't divisive or anything.
No,
you
man,
know,
that's what I wanted. I wanted people to ask good questions and challenge these things, and so that you guys can lay out what you're thinking and how you're reading this and researching it, and I can lay out the same.
no doubt. I really appreciate all three of you guys. I just I don't have a stance yet. I'm not ready to take a stance. I want to be.
Yeah.
I want to equip myself to where I can feel like I'm confident, and all three of y'all have been a great help in helping me do that. And, I make music, but I am not a teacher, and I want everybody to know that I'm not trying to teach anybody,
That's okay.
All I can tell you, brothers, the commentaries of men can often be very confusing, right? We just need to have our ground, foundation built on the scriptures and know them so that we can be able to interpret them better.
Agreed. Well, I appreciate you, brothers, and shalom to all of you.
Yeah,
Much
all
love to you,
Join us,
Shalom.
Mikey.
Yep.
Awesome,
Goodbye.
brother. See you next time.
Later on.
This is probably the last thing I'll pull up, guys.
All right.
Did you find it? I don't remember what you were talking about, brother. I may have missed that part.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in 16. It's just talking about people all across the world, believers all across the world will be suffering persecution from everybody, from all nations. So that would make sense if they're falling into the deception through the mark of the beast and through the beasts. This is the world wonders after the beast. So yeah, I think there will be people that get sold in the deception of the beast, and there's other people that will be what Yeshua said, the sheep, right? Where they saw the least his brethren, and they did Torah to them. They showed kindness, mercy, hospitality, whatever to them during not just their regular life, but also during this tribulation time. Because not everybody's going to fall for the beast. Just like Westway's aptly put earlier, Satan's really not that powerful. You just got to stand up to him. The beast may be able to kill you, but I mean, come on now. May the Father give me the passion and the courage to be Obi-Wan Kenobi at my death and say, strike me down. I should become more powerful than you can ever imagine.
I am willing rather to be absent from the body, right?
That's right. Because the next time the beast sees me, I'm coming out the ground, glorified, dressed in white, and he's going to be scrambling and running for me because I then will be 1,000 times more powerful than his little Nephilim body ever could be. So, imagine Satan. This is the crazy part. Imagine Satan gets out after 1,000 years, gets out of a hole in the ground to see an entire kingdom on earth and filled with glorified saints by the Lord willing billions, but who knows, hundreds of millions. And he's like, man, I had Yeshua. Now I got all these little Yeshuas to deal with. Like they're all they all were given the promise he was given. They're all given this glorified state. And imagine his mind of if it was hard enough against the angels in Yeshua, now I've got all this, Yeshua multiplied by all these other glorified saints. And so he's just talk about just fighting a losing cause. He's just madness, absolute madness.
He'll be laying open from thigh to neck.
Yeah,
that beast, the
so
Assyrian.
guys, this was an awesome discussion. Thanks so much for joining me and being willing to ask questions and being willing to interrupt me and let me interrupt you, and just so we get clarity, to figure out like what are you asking, what are you saying, because sometimes the connection is bad, or just as a host, I'm always trying to make sure I'm trying to put myself in the seat of the audience to make sure they're following. So if I like take myself out of Sean's brain, I think, all right, if I'm listening to this, did I understand West Blaze's breakdown of what he's asking?
Sure.
And so that's why sometimes I interrupt and I'm like, hey, can you explain this or that, or what are you using to define this word? So thanks to your patience when I do that, guys.
It's all good.
As you've seen, I've interviewed other people who don't like that, and they get upset, but you guys are awesome. Had great patience tonight.
Yeah, no worries. And anybody who hung in here for 3 hours and 45 minutes, y'all are awesome and troopers, and we appreciate you.
Not just anybody. It says that we got in the chat alone 156 people. At one point, it was 210.
I saw that. Yeah.
So that's not the actual full number as far as who's watching. So
no, of course.
I think people are super interested in this topic, and that's why it's so challenging. Tonight, I put up bowl seal trumpet judgment breakdowns very briefly, which, as you saw, weren't even included in the little millennial reign timeline breakdown because I just couldn't fit it all. Like there's so much going on. This is why 3 years ago when Adam Fink, he asked Ken and I if we want to do a show on his channel, and I was like, yeah, I got a great idea. All the details of Yeshua's return. And Adam was like, sure, it sounds great. And then I told Ken about it, and Ken was like, you know how many episodes that would be? I'm like, yeah, I do. I was like, the people need to know this. Like, that's a lot. It's
right.
There's literally dozens of things happening at the same time. This is why it's so difficult, in my opinion. It's been so difficult for people to figure out and understand, especially because they just stick with Revelation. In my opinion, the Old Testament preps you for Revelation. So, like you've heard me say on the broadcasts, and study the Old Testament super well, study Enoch super well, and then by the time you get to Revelation, you realize it's just repeating everything with a little extra detail sprinkled in. But ultimately, the big ideas are just being repeated
from Ezekiel, Isaiah.
Yeah, and that's a claim that I make that I challenge everyone listening to test me on that. Study the Old Testament super well and First Enoch, and then by the time you get to Matthew 24 and Matthew 13 and all of Revelation, 2 Thessalonians 8, like you just realize, oh, I got it. I know.
It all fits together so beautifully. And I think we did a decent job of culminating it and bringing it together to explain some things that really seem to make sense for Marlo and other people. So I enjoyed it. But let's get out of here, brothers.
Appreciate you guys. Everyone put up the thumbs up, go visit West Blaze Music, go visit Mike Maranatha, go visit Marlo Jean. He just dropped a new track, FanFed.
Oh yeah.
It's good.
Fire.
It's good.
Enjoying it, brother. More to come. Good. And
awesome.
we need a new track to premiere on Uncommon Ground again soon. So we got to get back to work. I'm with it.
And I heard that you guys were working on something, right?
Oh yes,
super secret, top secret.
Yeah, no, we got music for sure. We're putting it together.
Well, I heard just
no surprise there.
Like you sent me a little taste just a few months ago, West Place. That what I heard with them was amazing. So I'm excited for when you guys get ready.
Excellent.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Love you guys. And thank you everyone in the chat. We'll talk to you later.
Later on.
All right, shalom.